Chapter 310. A milky white light appeared around Yamu's body. Of course, she knew how strong her opponent was. Even though he had lost the Xianyuan sword, Yamu still regarded him as her greatest opponent. A golden armor appeared quietly. It was the armor of the goddess of war and wisdom, Athena. The divine aura was completely contained within. At this moment, Yamu was like an indestructible rock in the midst of a huge wave, firmly confronting Chi Yu's huge energy. Neither of them took the initiative to attack. With the experience of fighting on Mount Everest, they were already very familiar with their opponent. Although they did not move now, they both knew that once the battle started, it would be a thunderous one. Perhaps the battle between the two of them would end in just a few minutes. A blue light flickered around Chi Yu's body. That was the gentleness of the water thundercloud force. In a battle on the sea, choosing the water thundercloud force was undoubtedly the wisest choice. The water element energy here was extremely abundant, and it was the best for replenishing one's body. The scepter of the goddess of victory gradually turned into a sharp spear in Yamu's hands. The energy waves of the artifact continued to rise. Under the illumination of the sun, the golden spear erupted with a tyrannical energy wave. Just as Chi Yu had predicted, after going all out in the battle with the asteroid, Yamu's strength had made another breakthrough. She had reached another high point. With Athena's 3 artifacts in her hands, she could unleash even greater power. Both of them had god-level strength. One of them represented the West's best at fighting, while the other represented the East's strength. Their auras instantly rose to the peak. When the energy waves on their bodies reached the peak, even the light of the sun couldn't help but dim a lot. Almost at the same time, both of them moved. The Athena spear in Yamu's hands instantly changed from pointing diagonally to pointing horizontally. The tip of the spear erupted with a golden light that was 3 feet long. Her body and spear became one, and she turned into a golden lightning, piercing towards Chi Yu. A blue light appeared on Chi Yu's hands. He did not use any weapons other than the Xianyuan sword. He also didn't have a weapon that could compare to Athena's spear. Therefore, his hand became the best weapon. The hands of a godly expert could be described as a godly weapon. At this moment, Chi Yu was the best person to explain this point. The blue light was like a huge beam of light in midair. This beam of light instantly condensed, and in the blink of an eye, it had already collided with Yamu's Athena spear. The blue light instantly converged. As soon as the golden light arrived, it was split open from the middle. However, the broken blue light didn't disappear. Instead, it formed a huge ball of blue light that directly enveloped Yumao's body. Then, Yamu saw that within this huge blue light ball, there were blue light balls that were only the size of a fist. These blue light balls were flashing with a strange electric light. It was as if the scene of a nuclear bomb hitting an asteroid had happened again, but this time, it appeared in the high seas of the Earth. The incomparably powerful roar brought about monstrous waves that were hundreds of meters high, completely enveloping the battlefield just now. Huge energy waves scattered in all directions. At the center of the battle between Chi Yu and Yamu, the sea level had dropped by more than 100 meters, forming a strange puddle in the middle of the sea. After a full 10 seconds, when all the shock waves dissipated, the waves crashed down and filled the puddle. However, the waves on the high seas had begun to fluctuate violently. The sound of the water was like a song full of murderous intent, a strange accompaniment in the sea. Yamu was still floating in midair, and so was Chi Yu. The distance between the two of them was more than 300 meters, and their bodies had changed to different degrees. Athena's shield had appeared in Yamu's left hand. She looked rather disheveled, and the purple hair on her back was standing up to different degrees. Even the armor on her body and the shield in her hand had many charred spots. Chi Yu had also changed. The black armor on his body had turned into a crimson gold color, and 3 pairs of wings were extended on his back. That was the strongest energy that the starry sun crimson gold armor brought. Only by using the starry sun crimson gold armor could he completely integrate his own energy with the treasures in Kiran's octagon. There was an additional crack on the chest of the starry sun crimson gold armor. That was the mark left by Athena's spear. You've become stronger. Yama looked at Chiyu with a solemn expression. Chiyu said calmly, "You've also become stronger. If you were still the same you from Mount Everest, you wouldn't have been able to leave a mark on my body." Yamu took a deep breath and calmed herself down. She said, "If you were still the same you from back then, I'm afraid you would have been injured by now." Her heart was filled with shock. Chiyu's strength had improved much more than she had imagined. Especially his control of energy. Ming Ming possessed water attribute energy, but a large number of lightning attribute energy balls appeared in an instant. Moreover, the density of the energy was so high that even she could not completely resist it. With the help of water attribute energy, those lightning balls produced a huge explosive force. At that moment, the blood in her body was still surging. If not for her Athena's shield defending in time, she would have been injured by now. She had used 3 divine weapons, while Chiyu had only launched an energy attack. On the surface, it seemed that both sides had been injured. However, Yama knew very well. At the very least, in terms of energy intensity and control, she was no longer comparable to Chiyu. At that moment, she could not help but think of the improvement in Chiyu's strength when they were facing the asteroid. It seemed that he had once again broken through the bottleneck and reached an even more terrifying level. It was just as she and Pope Marty had predicted. Chiyu's strength was tyrannical. It was not in the special nature of his energy, but in the aspect of his almost limitless potential. His current strength seemed to have surpassed the bottleneck of this world, reaching a level above the god level. Facing such an opponent, how could Yamu not be shocked? Blue light was emitted from Chiyu's body once again. This time, there was no support from the water thundercloud force, when he was attacking just now. In order to make his lightning balls more stealthy, although there were many of them, the volume of each one was very small. However, it was different now. Balls of lightning the size of basketballs began to revolve around Chiyu's body. There were a total of 18 balls of lightning, which set off Chiyu's reddish-gold figure. It looked very terrifying. Chiyu did not move. He maintained his original position and floated there. The 18 balls of lightning, which contained terrifying energy, began to spin rapidly. Every time they spun, the lightning would explode. Every time they revolved, they would create a cyclone. The light of the cyclone gradually turned from light blue to dark green. That's right, it was wind energy. This time, it was a combination of wind and thunder. In the center of the wind and thunder, Chiyu slowly closed his eyes and wholeheartedly felt the energy aura he was emitting. Even the slightest energy fluctuation could not escape the detection of his mind power. Yamu's expression changed. She found that she could no longer feel Chiyu in the center of the wind and thunder. The ever-increasing wind and thunder energy had caused the sunlight in the sky to disappear. Large patches of dark clouds appeared in the sky above the sea. The huge energy fluctuation made the whole sponge restless. Every time the tyrannical energy fluctuation flickered, the sea would boil. What a terrifying energy! What level has he advanced to? Could it be that he had another fortuitous encounter on the small planet? This was the only thought in Yama's mind at the moment. She was very confident in her own strength. After going all out against the small planet, her own energy was greatly stimulated, causing her energy to increase again. It must be known that it was easier said than done to further improve the strength of her and Chiyu. Therefore, before coming here, she had already determined that Chiyu could not be her opponent. After all, he no longer had his most powerful attack weapon, the Xianyuan sword. However, things did not go as she wished. At this time, she realized how naive her judgment was. Chiyu was much stronger than the last time. Even without the assistance of the Xianyuan sword, his energy had improved to a terrifying level. Just the energy fluctuation alone was not inferior to the attack she launched with the help of the artifact. How much energy was needed to achieve this? She could not wait any longer. Yama knew that if she waited any longer, when Chi-Yu increased his energy to the peak, it would be even more difficult for her to resist. Yama moved. The Athena's spear in her hand quickly moved in the air, and a golden triangle appeared in front of her. The huge energy fluctuation caused the surrounding air to contract continuously. The dark clouds in the sky were suddenly broken by a magical energy. Sunlight fell from the sky and shrouded Yama's body, increasing the huge energy fluctuation once again. The holy aura was unprecedentedly strong. The golden triangle floated out and imprinted in the direction of Chi-Yu. At the same time, the energy on Yama's body began to fluctuate strangely, and symbols that belonged to constellations appeared around her body. That's right, it was the signs of the Zodiac domain. In terms of domain, she felt that she had an advantage. Although the signs of the Zodiac domain that she launched alone was not the strongest, it definitely had a very good supporting effect. As for Chi-Yu's Zodiac Guardian domain, it could only be launched with the help of the Zodiac Guardian warriors. Since her energy was not as good as his, the only thing she could rely on now was the advantage of her domain. Without the Xianyuan sword, how would he be able to break through her domain? Might of the 9 provinces, wind and thunder. Chi-Yu's deep voice rang out. His voice was filled with magnetism, but it brought along terrifying energy undulations. The huge energy instantly rose to the boiling point, and the energy fluctuation reached a crazy level in the blink of an eye. The tornado that was intertwined with the green and blue colors floated into the air and abruptly moved to meet the golden triangle. Suddenly, the huge tornado swept horizontally just as it was about to touch the golden triangle. Then, a ball of lightning spun rapidly. It instantly enlarged in mid-air and completely swallowed the golden triangle. Loud booms kept erupting, and ball after ball of lightning engulfed the golden triangle. Yama relied on her full strength to launch an attack, but after the first ball of lightning, it was finally completely destroyed. The remaining 7 balls of lightning suddenly scattered in midair, and under the cover of the green light, they spun rapidly and shot towards Yama's body at the same time from different directions and in different ways. Some flew straight, some flew diagonally, and some flew in arcs. The strange appearance was so terrifying, but Yama could clearly feel that they would reach her body at the same time. The signs of the Zodiac domain had been fully launched at this time. The spear slashed horizontally, and a crystal golden light floated out in the shape of a fan, facing the 2 balls of lightning in front of it. This was the ultimate skill of the Capricorn constellation Guardian Miero, Hell Azura Blade. However, in the hands of Yamu, its power was unknown how many times stronger it was. With the help of the signs of the Zodiac domain, she could completely use the special ability of any constellation guardian to face different attacks. There were 2 balls of lightning attacking head-on. Just as the sharp golden light was about to destroy them, the 2 balls of lightning, which originally had no connection with each other, suddenly changed their direction. The 2 balls of lightning instantly changed their line of defense, and just as Yama's Athena Azura blade arrived, they collided with each other. Suddenly, an incomparably surging thunder roared, and the golden Athena Azura blade was smashed into pieces. Yama's body trembled violently. This time, her expression really changed. If it was said that Chi-Yu's strength was stronger than hers was not terrifying, then when her spiritual power could no longer completely lock on to Chi-Yu's attack, it was the most terrifying situation. From another perspective, after Chi-Yu launched his attack, he could still change the direction of his attack in the face of the strong pressure brought by Yamu. This proved that his strength was completely above Yamu's. After all, Yama was Yamu. Although she was shocked, she did not panic. The Athena spear in her hand transformed into countless light shadows, and completely destroyed the remaining 5 balls of lightning. However, every time she destroyed a ball of lightning, her body would tremble violently. When all the balls of lightning were destroyed, Her right arm holding the Athena spear was already trembling. What a powerful energy! At least, Yamu had never encountered such a powerful lightning attribute energy before. Chi-Yu looked at Yamu in disdain. With his thundercloud force that had been raised to a bottleneck, how could Yamu's spiritual power lock on to him? Although she had the advantage of a relic did not mean everything. After testing Yamu's strength, Chi-Yu knew that the time for the final battle had come. The tall golden body flew forward. This time, Chi-Yu did not launch another energy attack, and his flying speed was very slow. However, as his body continued to get closer to Yamu, the light shadow behind him became clearer. When he was 100 meters away from Yamu, the four auspicious clouds Inkiran's shadow behind him had already become solid. Chi-Yu's energy had been raised to the limit at this moment. Facing Yamu, Chi-Yu did not even think of launching a sneak attack. Just as he was about to launch the final attack, with a slight shake of his shoulder, another Chi-Yu appeared next to him. Doppelganger domain. It was the doppelganger domain. The signs of the Zodiac domain could not do anything. When faced with an absolutely powerful energy, one's domain would be useless. Right arms. Both of Inkiran's right arms were raised at the same time. The four colors of thundercloud force rose from the feet to the two right arms in the form of a vortex. The black and silver lights became stronger and stronger under the effect of the four colors of thundercloud force. At this moment, there seemed to be only two colors of light in the sky. Even the rain eyes were somewhat sluggish. She had never thought that the strength of humans in this world could be raised to the level that Chi-Yu was now. At this moment, the pressure that she was facing was enough to make her collapse. One Chi-Yu's aura was enough to make her rely on the artifact to withstand it. Now, she was facing two Chi-Yus. The same level of energy, the same movement and the same attack method. Yamu knew that she was going to lose today. Chi-Yu's original body revealed a trace of coldness. Yamu. Yamu, I used to love you so much. But now I must destroy you. Seeing that the biggest hatred in his heart was about to end, Chi-Yu felt an inexplicable pain in his heart. Was his heart really as cold as it looked on the surface? No, he was a person. He was full of emotions. As the saying goes, the deeper the love, the more severe the responsibility. He hated Yamu so much because he used to love her so much. However, the pain in his heart would not make Chi-Yu show mercy. Even if he did not do it for himself, he could not forgive Yamu for what she had done. It was because of him and Yamu that so many things happened. That was why his friend and the woman he loved had to die for him. He had to give his friend and lover an explanation, and he also had to give himself an explanation. So, Kiran swung his arm. It was swung with surging energy. Back then, even the great demon king, Satan, was completely blocked in the face of such an attack. And at that time, Chi-Yu had not raised his energy to the limit. The light on the two Chi-Yu's body had become completely distorted. It seemed that no one could change the current situation. Yamu's Athena's spear and Athena's shield were erected at the same time. The signs of the Zodiac's domain energy was completely restrained, and the huge divine power was suddenly raised to the peak. From her eyes, Chi-Yu could not see fear, only a special kind of light. The golden light suddenly exploded, and a golden sun-shaped light shone from Yamu's heart. Then, her body turned into a huge golden ball of light, and suddenly burst out. Incomparably surging black and silver light intertwined in the air, forming a huge energy ball of light. Two super waves that represented different energies collided almost instantly. Chi-Yu and Yamu felt an irresistible huge energy invading their bodies almost at the same time. Chi-Yu was shocked to find that the energy that Yamu exploded was not weaker than his, and was even a bit stronger than his. How was this possible? Even with the help of the divine weapon, Yamu should not have such an advantage over him, right? Soon, Chi-Yu understood, because in the surging light, the last thing he saw was Yamu's body shattering. It was not her body that shattered, but the three divine weapons that belonged to goddess Athena completely shattered at the same time. The huge golden ball of light was the huge energy wave formed by the shattering of the three divine weapons. Destroying the divine weapons to launch an attack was probably the strongest level that Yamu could reach. Even if she won, it would not be possible to restore the three divine weapons in the future in a short period of time. But she still chose to do it. The golden light instantly collided with the two Kiran's arm cracks energy. The strong collision caused Qi Yu's mind to instantly go blank. Under Wen Ting's control, the doppelganger exploded with the strongest energy and instantly returned to his body. The golden light and the black and silver light could not devour each other, so they completely exploded at that moment. The two kinds of light quickly merged in the space, and then the huge energy wave produced a strange aura. Silence. After that huge amount of energy fused, it actually entered a silent process. The golden light and the red and gold light completely merged, forming a huge energy ball with a diameter of 100 meters. At this moment, Qi Yu and Yamu were in this huge light ball. The three divine weapons on Yamu's body had completely disappeared, and her naked body was definitely the most perfect work of art in the world. Her fair skin shone with a crystal light, her long purple hair, and her holy face. Every single point was so perfect. Golden blood. It flowed down the corner of Yamu's mouth, and the two just stood there in the air, facing each other in the huge energy ball. Qi Yu did not understand what was happening. It was also the first time he encountered such a situation after a huge energy collision. He looked at Yamu, who was in front of him. The divine light in his eyes could not help but gradually become fierce. However, in this huge energy ball, whether it was him or Yamu, they could not move even half a step. The battle intent and coldness in Yamu's eyes had completely disappeared, leaving only a gentle light. Looking at Qi Yu, her gaze became unusually gentle. Qi Yu, although you will not admit it, in my heart, you will always be my fiancé. Do you know? Qi Yu slowly closed his eyes. He could not guarantee that he would not be tempted by this perfect body in front of him, only the burning hatred in his heart could stop his rising desire. Don't you think it's ridiculous to say that? Do you want me to understand more deeply about your cruelty? Yamu's gaze slightly froze, and she shook her head in pain. No, Qi Yu. You know that's not what I mean. You are the first man who has seen my body. Qi Yu still closed his eyes. The corner of his mouth revealed a trace of disdain. So what? If it was not to block my attack, you would have completely destroyed your divine weapon. Yamu did not speak again. The sadness in her eyes intensified. She knew the hatred between her and Qi Yu did not diminish even after she expressed her goodwill many times. She lowered her head. Her perfect body seemed to have an additional layer of strange white. Could it be? Is there no room for reconciliation between us? Qi Yu, is there any way to make you forget everything that happened in the past? Qi Yu abruptly opened his eyes. Two rays of resplendent golden light shot out as he slowly nodded. Yes. Yamu was stunned. She did not have any hope, but at this moment she suddenly heard the word yes from Qi Yu. She could not believe her ears, and even more could not believe that it was actually true. Somewhat anxious, this goddess Athena's breathing even quickened. Say it. Qi Yu's gaze was very calm, but it became colder than before. He slowly raised his hand and stretched out two fingers. After completing two things, I can forget everything that happened in the past. First, Wen Ting, the Emperor's Heart Snow Lotus King, and Klinsman come back to life. Hearing Qi Yu's words, the flame of hope that had just ignited in Yamu's heart was instantly extinguished, and her pretty face turned pale. Dead people come back to life? How was that possible? Even if she and Qi Yu had reached the divine level, it was still impossible to accomplish. Her voice was trembling. Then what about the second thing? The way Qi Yu looked at Yamu changed. Yamu, do you know? To me, the thing that caused me the most pain was not the hatred that came from you absorbing my source of life to increase your own strength. Yamu's body stiffened. There was something in the way she looked at Chiyu. She also understood something. It was deception. Deception that I could not tolerate. If you had used your own strength to obtain my source of life, although I would have hated you, that was only because I was not strong enough. I would have hated myself more. However, you did not do that. You colluded with the Pope and deceived my love. Using love as a cover, you gradually led me into the trap that you laid. I am a fool, a huge fool. If you want me to forgive you, sure. After completing the first thing, give me the most important thing in your life in exchange. Maybe then I will consider forgiving you. Yamu's voice trembled. What do you want? A sinister glint flashed in Chi-Yu's eyes. What do I want? Why did you lie to me in the first place? Wasn't it to increase your strength to the point where the 3 divine weapons of Athena would acknowledge you? In other words, you lied to me in order to increase your own strength. Since that is the case, then use your strength to exchange for it. If I remember correctly, the goddess Athena is one of the 3 great virgin goddesses in your Greek mythology. I want your body, I want your divine power to flow away because of the sacrifice of your body. Can you do that? You can't. You desire power so much. Yamu, you must remember, unless these 2 things are completed at the same time, there will never be a possibility of reconciliation between you and me. Moreover, you no longer have a chance. Do you think that you can still escape from me today? The 2 of them conversed in the huge golden ball of light. The huge energy that surrounded them had already begun to rotate rapidly. They did not feel anything from the outside world because the energy was too huge. The concentrated attack of Chi-Yu, in addition to the power from Yamu's shattering of the 3 divine weapons, had brought about a huge change in the sea. The surroundings of the golden ball of light were completely covered by hundreds of feet of waves. The ball of light floated there, surrounded by a sea of blue. The depth of the sea was about 300 meters. At this moment, right below the floating golden ball of light was a deep and serene seabed. The huge energy continued to rise and erupt. Circles of distorted light continuously poured into the surrounding seawater. Yamu was stunned. She looked at Chi-Yu in a daze. She had never expected that Chi-Yu would make such a request. Are you still the Chi-Yu I knew? Yamu's voice gradually became calm. Shaking his head, Chi-Yu said, I'm not. From the day we met in England, I'm no longer the old Chi-Yu. And all of this is because of you. Don't you know that? Yamu's face had become even paler. Golden blood flowed from the corner of her mouth to her towering and firm chest, dyeing it with a golden luster. A faint light flickered. Yamu slowly raised her head and looked at the sky. No matter what, in my heart, you are still the original Chi-Yu. Everything has changed. Yes. All of this is because of me. You are not the biggest fool. I am. I only saw temporary benefits, but I fell into the abyss of pain. Everything that was originally beautiful has changed qualitatively. All of this can only be blamed on me, isn't it? Under Chi-Yu's astonished gaze, Yamu's body suddenly turned completely golden. The huge energy ball of light surrounding the 2 of them suddenly underwent a strange change. A huge energy fluctuation instantly erupted. This time, the energy did not only affect the outside, but also Chi-Yu and Yamu. Almost in an instant, Chi-Yu and Yamu's bodies were pressed together in the center of the energy ball by an incomparably huge energy. Chapter 3:11. The energy finally exploded at the very last moment. At that moment, a golden symbol suddenly flew out from Yamu's forehead. The symbol shattered in midair, producing a golden powder that instantly enveloped the 2 of them. The explosive force produced by the huge energy ball was absolutely terrifying. Almost in an instant, the entire space was completely torn apart. A terrifying fault appeared in midair. The huge roar caused the sponge within a radius of hundreds of square kilometers to boil instantly. Then, the seawater disappeared. A golden ray of light passed through the friction of the fault in the space. The 2 original figures disappeared. The raging sea, on the other hand, exploded with its perfect power in an instant. The power of nature was always the most terrifying power. No one knew what happened on the high seas. Even the most sophisticated satellites could not monitor Chi-Yu and Yamu's huge energy. At the bottom of the sea, the volcanoes belonging to the Pacific Volcanic Seismic Zone were instantly penetrated by the explosive energy. Earthquakes and volcanoes, while forming a fault in the space, also brought the underwater world a hellish scene. The fault caused the volcanoes and earthquakes to erupt at an unprecedented level. After all, the location of the high seas was close to Asia, where the Yenhuang Republic was located. After the eruption of the volcanoes and earthquakes in the high seas, the most powerful tsunami in history appeared on the high seas. The direction of the tsunami's attack. With the huge energy as the core, it radiated in all directions. The power of the tsunami was undoubtedly huge. However, this place was too far away from the land on the other side of the ocean. But the distance to Asia, where the Yenhuang Republic was located, was in 3 days. A devastating disaster occurred on Earth. No one knew why this disaster came, because all the weather forecasts did not show the reason for the change. Underwater volcanoes and earthquakes. It seemed to have appeared in an instant. However, there was only one country that was affected the most by this disaster. To reach Asia from the location of the explosion of Chi-Yu and Yamu, one had to pass through an island. On this island was a relatively advanced country on Earth. Its name was the Sun Nation. Originally, the Sun Nation seemed to have blocked the sea routes of the Yenhuang Republic. But now, the Sun Nation had become the best barrier for the Yenhuang Republic. Everything happened so naturally. The tsunami, which lasted for 3 days, finally reached the Sun Nation on the 2nd day. In just 1 day, the Sun Nation was faced with only one thing, and that was the destruction of its people. The largest tsunami in history swallowed the entire Sun Nation. Of the Sun Nation's population of over 100 million, less than 1% would survive. Such a huge disaster struck fear into the hearts of all the countries on Earth. However, no one would have thought that the instigators of this disaster were actually 2 people, and only 2 people. The golden light grew brighter and brighter. Chi-Yu could not even see Yamu clearly. The pressure around his body was so great that Chi-Yu subconsciously released his own origin energy to protect his body. The surroundings had already turned into a golden space, incomparably large amounts of distorted energy. Tearing at his and Yamu's bodies, a familiar feeling arose. Chi-Yu was shocked. He finally understood why Yamu had come to fight him. However, at this moment it was impossible for him to do anything. Everything had already begun. There was no way it could stop, even if it was Chi-Yu. Nor could it affect the process of time travel. His mind went blank for a moment. However, the further enhancement of his strength protected Chi-Yu's body. Although he was unwilling, because Yamu's body was pressed against his, and both of them were enveloped by the golden light, the energy that Chi-Yu released actually helped Yamu block a lot of the destructive power of the spatial distortion. After an unknown amount of time, suddenly Chi-Yu felt a pair of soft and smooth arms wrapped around his waist. The already close contact of the graceful body seemed to have become even closer to him. The detection of his mental strength was restored, and the huge amount of energy was constantly converged. Everything around him also began to change. The golden light disappeared in an instant, and the milky white light made it difficult for Chi-Yu to open his eyes for a while. It took him a full 10 minutes to get used to it before his vision returned to normal. At this moment, Yamu seemed to have fallen asleep. Her whole body was in Chi-Yu's arms, her hands hugging him tightly, as if she was afraid of losing him. The faint light flickered, and every time the energy fluctuated, it produced a special feeling. The elemental fluctuations were filled with the aura of light, and even Chi-Yu felt unusually comfortable. After all natural elements had an affinity with the light element. Moreover, the energy of the light element and the fire element were very close. Naturally, Chi-Yu would feel a sense of comfort. As he floated down, when Chi-Yu's feet touched the ground, he was surprised to find that the ground here was actually a light gold color. At the same time, there were all kinds of strange flowers and trees growing in the surroundings. The strange scenery was breathtaking. Many of the plants looked like jewelry, and they shone with an unbelievable luster. However, to Chi-Yu, the beauty here was far from being comparable to the ancient beasts, because this place had lost the aura of nature and the aura that was closest to the human body. That's right, this was a plane that had transcended the human world. Although its appearance was different compared to hell, there was not much difference in the plane level. After his mind went blank for a short while, Chi-Yu was fully awake. At this moment, he had regained control of his own body. The energy in his body instantly burst forth, and Yamu's delicate body shook violently. Her body was immediately sent flying by Chi-Yu's energy. She spat out a mouthful of golden blood in the air. At this moment, her beautiful eyes finally opened. Surprisingly, there was no anger or dissatisfaction in her gaze when she looked at Chi-Yu. Instead, there was a sense of satisfaction. Chi-Yu was a man. Although he hated Yamu under the circumstances just now, he would not kill Yamu. Even if he had to destroy this enemy in front of him, he would definitely use the most direct method. You lured me to a duel just to bring me here? Chi-Yu looked at Yamu and said faintly. Yamu was stunned for a moment. She looked at Chi-Yu, and a trace of sadness appeared on her face. Even her own body could not attract him at all? Chi-Yu, has your hatred for me really reached this stage? He nodded slowly and said, yes. I invited you to a duel so that I could come here. Chi-Yu smiled, but his smile looked very cruel. Good, Yamu, you are worthy of being the successor of the goddess Athena. Your wisdom is always so effective when used to deceive. This is the second time you have deceived me, and you have succeeded again. Isn't it? However, I'm afraid the price of success is something you can't bear. Yamu's expression changed slightly. She looked at Chi-Yu's palm like a knife and slowly raised his right arm. She said anxiously, Chi-Yu, I didn't mean to deceive you. However, if it wasn't for the energy we released together, it would be impossible to break through space and come here. If I didn't invite you to a duel, how could you cooperate with me? Chi-Yu looked at the surrounding scenery with contempt. At this moment, the origin of nature in his body was frantically absorbing the energy of this world to replenish itself. Compared to the dark energy of the hell world, the abundant light energy here was much easier to absorb. The toughness of his body was definitely not something that Yamu could compare with. Even though he had traveled through space and time, he did not suffer any harm, and the energy that he had consumed was also rapidly recovering at this moment. This could be seen from the light that condensed in his hand becoming stronger and stronger. No matter what the reason you brought me here is, I have no reason to stop the duel between us. It's just that our duel has been shifted from Earth to this so-called God realm. God realm? Is that so? That should be what you guys call it. Yamu looked at Chi-Yu's contemptuous gaze. Her delicate body slowly retreated, and there was a trace of fear in her eyes. From the energy in Chi-Yu's hand, she could clearly judge what would happen when it came. In the previous duel with Chi-Yu, coupled with the energy generated by the 3 artifacts that were enough to break through space, Yamu had consumed more than 70% of her energy. In addition, her body was far less resilient than Chi-Yu's. Although under Chi-Yu's protection, she did not withstand enough distorted energy to destroy her body. The functions of her body were still damaged to a certain extent. She did not have the magical recovery ability that Chi-Yu had. Goddess Athena, who only had 30% of her energy left, faced Kiran, who still had at least 80% of her energy. The outcome of the battle was obvious. Chi-Yu's gaze became colder and colder, and the energy condensed in his hand became stronger and stronger. Yamu, did you know? Back then, after the battle on the asteroid, I went to Hell once, which was the plane where the great demon King Satan was. Do you know what I brought to that plane? It was the plane that the Princess of Hell, Langere, brought me to. She wanted to use the power of Hell to imprison me there forever. However, the final result was that I destroyed 1/5 of the core circle of Hell, and countless Hell creatures were burned to the ground. Satan and his subordinate Lucifer were hit hard at the same time. Under my instigation, Satan killed his own brother, the 10-winged Satan. Satan's 3 dreadlords and a large number of experts from the Burning Legion were also destroyed by my hands. Did you think that bringing me to this so-called God realm would allow you to destroy me or achieve some of your goals? You're wrong. What you brought back to the God realm was only the power of destruction and destruction. As he spoke, the smile on Chi Yu's face disappeared and was replaced by the flames of anger. Another deception had caused his resentment towards Yumu to reach a new high point. For this woman in front of him, it was absolutely impossible for him to show mercy. Yumu subconsciously took a step back. She was stunned by Chi Yu's words. She could not imagine that Chi Yu had gone to hell and returned safely. Moreover, he had brought a devastating blow to hell. Was this something a human could do? At that moment, her mind was in a mess, and she had even forgotten to explain herself. Chi Yu walked forward step by step. With every step he took, his energy would recover a little more. The current Chi Yu was definitely a cautious person. Although he said that he didn't care, he also knew that every single life form in this plane that was different from Earth couldn't be compared to humans on Earth. Therefore, before he attacked Yumu, he tried his best to recover his energy. Only then would he be able to face a powerful enemy better. The huge energy became stronger and stronger. The huge pressure alone made Yumu spit out golden blood again. Everything around them was so calm. It was as if they were the only 2 people in the God realm at that moment. Suddenly, just when Yumu felt that her body was about to break under the huge pressure from Chi Yu, the huge pressure disappeared without warning. Yumu, who had been resisting with all her might, suddenly felt that the energy in her body was suddenly emptied. She spat out another mouthful of blood because she had used the wrong force. The injuries on her body became more serious, and the energy in her body was instantly drained. Chi Yu slowly retracted his raised right hand. He looked at Yumu in front of him and smiled again. His evil smile made Yumu's body tremble. She looked at the man who had plunged her into the abyss of pain in a daze. She did not understand why he had suddenly stopped. "Do you want to ask why I didn't kill you again?" Chi Yu asked with a smile. Yumu nodded subconsciously. Her eyes had already become blank. Chi Yu had already walked to within 3 meters of Yumu. The spiritual aura that he emitted had already completely locked onto Yumu's body. "It's very simple. I suddenly feel that if I kill you now, it will only be a relief for you. How can I avenge myself and my friends? When we were still on Earth, I once said that the most important thing to you is power. It was also because of power that you lied to me back then. Since you desire power so much, you want to become stronger. So, if I make you lose all your power now and turn you into an ordinary person, forever an ordinary person, what will you do? Will you fall into endless pain? That is the ending that I want to see the most." Devil. In Yumu's eyes, Chi Yu had now become a pure devil. The fear in her heart had reached its peak. She could not even speak as she watched the golden light gradually disappear from Chi Yu's body. The 3 pairs of wings on the back of the crimson gold armor disappeared one by one. The crimson gold armor gradually turned into a faint energy light and entered his body. With the disappearance of the crimson gold armor, his sturdy chest, bronze-colored skin, his perfectly sculpted muscles, his slender and imposing figure, the mysterious parts that only belong to men, appeared in front of the virgin goddess one by one. Yumu took a few steps back. However, under the lock of Chi Yu's spiritual power, and with a large amount of her own energy draining away, she staggered and fell to the ground. A man and a woman, naked together. What do you think I'm doing? I never thought that the word rape would actually appear on me one day. Yumu suddenly felt a weight on her body. An extremely familiar aura had completely pressed her onto the golden ground. Before she could make a sound, she realized that her body had been completely locked on by Chi Yu's enormous energy. Her skin, which had never been touched by another man, was once again in full contact with Chi Yu. Previously, when they had been in contact in the air during the time travel, at least Chi Yu was wearing the crimson gold armor. However, this time it was completely skin-to-skin contact. That special and strange feeling made Yamu's body tremble even more violently. However, she could not even make a sound, let alone resist. Ugh! Before Yamu could struggle too much, Chi Yu's lips were already completely pressed against hers. In her brain, it was as if it had exploded. An extremely strong impact made Yamu lose her sense of direction. She did not know how many times she had hoped that she would be able to reconcile with Chi Yu. No matter how powerful and influential she was, at the end of the day, she was still a woman. As long as she was a woman, who did not want to be loved by their lover. However, she had never imagined that when she and Chi Yu were intimate again, things would turn out like this. This was the only thing that Yamu could think of now. Apart from that strange feeling, at this moment, her heart was filled with humiliation. Goddess Athena was the inheritor of the goddess's divine powers. If she lost her chastity just like that, then, just as Chi Yu had said, it would be more painful than killing her. Tears flowed down Yamu's face. She could already clearly feel Chi Yu's large, scorching hands forcefully touching the most sensitive parts of her body. Everything seemed to be going on in the dark. Sorrow filled every corner of her heart. Everything that had happened in the past could no longer be described as regret. It was over. Everything was over. Perhaps this was the price that she had to pay for her wrong decision back then. Her mind was completely blank. Yamu could not even struggle. She could only wait for that moment to come. Chi Yu stopped what he was doing. Looking at Yamu's tightly shut eyes that were constantly dripping with tears, apart from the pleasure of revenge, he also felt a slight pain in his heart at the same time. Was he too despicable? He might as well let her use her death to repay the hatred from back then. After all, she was the woman that he had once loved. Although he was already regretting his actions, Chi Yu was surprised to find that it was difficult for him to stop. Not only did Yamu have a perfect appearance, but she also had a perfect temperament and a perfect body. That strong combination of attraction had elevated his body and mind to an unprecedented realm of desire. The unprecedented strong feeling was gradually making him sink into the direction of oblivion. Stop! A loud shout filled with anger suddenly rang out, causing Chi Yu and Yamu to wake up from the oblivion of desire at the same time. The huge pressure instantly made the desire in Chi Yu's heart disappear. He did not hesitate at all. In an instant, he left Yamu's body, and black armor suddenly covered his body. With a flash of light, his body had floated hundreds of meters away. The golden light shone and completely enveloped Yamu's body. Almost in an instant, a golden dress appeared on Yamu's body. A huge and scorching aura dyed her delicate body. To Chi Yu's surprise, the large amount of energy that had been consumed in Yamu's body was rapidly recovering at this time. The recovery speed was so amazing that it even exceeded the speed at which Chi Yu's origin of nature could convert energy. A handsome man appeared next to Yamu. Behind him, there were 12 golden lights. The 12 golden lights were filled with extremely strong energy and extremely high temperature. The golden light that covered Yamu's body was emitted from them. As Yamu's energy continued to recover, the energy emitted by the 12 golden lights gradually weakened. The handsome man had a face that made Chi Yu jealous. He was tall, wore golden armor, and had a head of long golden hair that was draped over his back. His handsome face was filled with awe-inspiring righteousness. A scorching feeling was constantly released from his body. Even the spiritual lock he had released towards Chi Yu was filled with an unprecedented high temperature. This forced Chi Yu to fully focus on dealing with it. Based on Chi Yu's spiritual power, He could feel that the man in front of him was actually stronger than Yamu. Especially when he locked onto his energy aura, that scorching spiritual feeling was definitely something that his spiritual power did not possess. To be able to make spiritual power have an attribute, it could be seen how powerful the enemy in front of him was. The handsome man's eyes were filled with endless anger as he looked at Chi-Yu. Huge energy waves continued to rise, and a golden halo became brighter and brighter behind him. His entire body was burning in anger like a sun. "Who are you?" Chi-Yu asked calmly. As he spoke, he quickly absorbed the energy molecules in the air to fill his body. He could clearly feel how powerful this man in front of him was. In this so-called divine realm, this man's status was definitely not below that of the goddess of war and wisdom, Athena. "Since the divine realm appeared, you are the first person to bully my sister like this. I, sun god Apollo, in the name of God Emperor Zeus, challenge you to a duel. For the dignity of the divine realm." Sun god Apollo? No wonder he had such a huge amount of energy. He was actually Athena's brother, the sun god. Chi-Yu's gaze became solemn. He glanced at Yamu, who was shrouded in a golden dress, and his gaze became even colder. A dazzling light burst out. A huge shadow of ink Kirin appeared out of thin air behind him. The energy in his body was instantly raised to its peak, and the crimson gold armor appeared again. The four auspicious clouds of ink Kirin's domineering aura appeared again. A strong fighting spirit spread between the two men. Apollo's gaze was completely fixed on Chi-Yu. Just as he gathered all his energy and was about to launch a thunderous attack on Chi-Yu, suddenly, a figure appeared between the two of them. "No, don't," Yamu's voice was filled with anxiety. It was she who stood between Chi-Yu and Apollo. With the help of Apollo's 12 golden crows, she had already recovered most of her energy. She had already recovered more than half of her energy. Seeing that Chi-Yu was about to fight with Apollo, she hurriedly appeared between the two and stopped the battle from unfolding. "Sister, he has profaned your divine body. Are you still going to speak up for him?" Apollo was furious. His entire body was filled with an awe-inspiring aura. The temperature of the entire space had risen by many levels in that instant. Yamu shook her head forcefully. "No, Apollo. He's not our enemy. Have you forgotten how I reported to the God Emperor when I was in the human world? If we want to resolve the crisis on Earth, we have to rely on his power." Apollo looked at Rain Pupil in confusion. Could it be that he is the man you were talking about? But just now, he actually wanted to. Yamu sighed and said, "The past is the past. Apollo, you should know what is more important." The holy aura reappeared on Yamu's body. At least on the surface, her emotions had returned to normal in a short period of time. The energy aura on Chi-Yu's body did not decrease at all. After coming to the divine realm, he did not expend much energy to begin with. Now, he had recovered a lot. He released his spiritual power completely. Although he knew that it was hard to predict the outcome of the battle with Apollo, he was not too worried. He could even break through hell. Why couldn't he do it in the divine realm? Yamu slowly turned to Chi-Yu, as if nothing had happened. "Chi-Yu, I know that even if I say anything now, you will not believe me. But for the sake of the Greek guardians, and for the sake of Earth, I had no choice but to bring you here. This was the God world, and in the God world, no heavenly god could lie. Since you no longer believe me, I will let Athena's brother, the sun god Apollo, tell you everything. I believe that you will have a clear choice. I know that you hate me and want to take revenge on me, but can you delay the time for your revenge a little? At least wait until the crisis on Earth is over, okay? When that time comes, I am willing to give myself to you and let you do whatever you want to me. No matter what you decide, I will not resist." Chi-Yu looked at Yamu coldly. "Although I hate you, and the enmity between us must be resolved. However, I'm not like what you think. My mind is filled with nothing but hatred. Otherwise, I would have gone to Greece to look for you. All right, let me hear what Apollo, the sun god, has to say. Hearing this, Yamu was visibly relieved. At least, Chiyu had given her a chance to explain. He turned around and faced Apollo. Sorry to trouble you, Apollo. Please explain everything to him. I will go see the God Emperor first. As she spoke, she floated up and did not even dare to look at Chiyu. In the blink of an eye, her delicate body had disappeared into the vast sky. Taking a deep breath and calming his emotions, Chiyu turned to the sun god in front of him. What do you have to say, Your Excellency? We can begin now. On Earth, my companions are still waiting for me to return. Apollo's expression changed slightly. He was obviously angry at Chiyu's impoliteness, but he still held it in. Taking a deep breath, he said, Before you came back, Athena had already reported the situation on Earth to the God Emperor. I believe that you already know a lot. Yes, Earth is about to face a disaster, but this disaster is not as simple as just coming from hell. Before I explain it to you, let me briefly introduce the situation in the heavenly realm. As he spoke, Apollo waved his hand and the 12 golden crows rose into the sky. Instantly, a huge golden boundary enveloped Chi-Yu and Apollo. Apollo looked at Chi-Yu and said, The heavenly realm is different from the other realms. In hell, Satan leads his followers. There are all kinds of magical beasts and races in hell. There are a lot of them. The heavenly realm led by the Emperor Heaven is basically the same. Oh yes, the heavenly realm is the plane that the Vatican on Earth believes in. But in the heavenly realm, it is different. There is only one race in the heavenly realm, and that is the Protoss. The number of Protoss is far less than the number of people in the other two realms. We only have a few hundred gods of all levels. But every one of us gods possesses great power that the other realms cannot compare with. At this point, the arrogance on Apollo's face became even stronger. Chi-Yu did not say anything, but he secretly thought that Yamu definitely did not bring him to the heavenly realm to listen to their introduction of the heavenly realm. Could it be that she is looking for cooperation again? No, that is impossible. No matter what, I will not cooperate with Yamu again. After all, she is my enemy. Chi-Yu knew very well what he was thinking. In a sense, he was a soft-hearted person, especially when it came to women. If he spent more time with a perfect super beauty like Yamu, he was afraid that his heart would gradually soften. If that was the case, how could he face the dead Klinsman, the Emperor's Heart Snow Lotus Queen, and Wen-Ting? Thinking of this, he already had a plan. No matter what, this was the heavenly realm. To him, it was a completely foreign world. He had to think of a way to get back first. As for other things, he could not think about it for the time being. Chapter 312. Apollo continued, As a human, your strength has reached the pinnacle of human strength. However, your strength alone is far from enough to deal with the upcoming crisis on Earth. I'm sure you understand this very well. Chi-Yu asked, So what? Apollo's eyes shone brightly. As the saying goes, strength is strong when united, strength is weak when divided. On Earth, there are three forces that represent justice and light. The first is the believers of the Emperor Heaven, the Vatican. Even we have to admit that in terms of religious inheritance, the heavenly realm is much better than the divine realm. The Vatican's strength is also extremely huge on Earth. The second is the legacy power of the God world, led by Athena and her 12 constellation protectors. That is the most powerful force in the entire God world. As for the third, it is the guardian of the East that you represent. A long, long time ago, one of the 10 main gods of the divine realm, Hades, escaped into the underworld in pursuit of greater power. He betrayed the will of God and became the biggest traitor in the history of the divine realm. In the underworld, he constantly recruited experts from various planes to be his subordinate. After thousands of years of development, even if his strength is not as strong as Satan's, I'm afraid it's not that far off. When that special day comes, the power of justice will be isolated. The power of justice would be isolated, and all the experts of the evil dimension would have to face the temptation of the huge fat meat that was Earth. Those small planes that could be ignored were not scary, because they did not dare to compete with Satan. However, Hades was different. His influence was not inferior to the infernal realm, and when that day comes, he will 100% go to Earth to get a share. He is in great need of souls, especially fallen souls. These are the most common on Earth. When hell and the underworld come to the human world at the same time, if the three forces on Earth cannot unite to fight against the enemy, then you will have no chance to fight against them. Even if you unite, I'm afraid the chances of winning are very slim. Chi Yu smiled indifferently and said, "After saying so much, Your Excellency Apollo, I have a question to ask you." Apollo asked, "What problem?" Chi Yu said, "Yamu has told me many times about the arrival of that day. Can you tell me when that day will come? And what was the so-called that day? I don't even know this. How can we cooperate in the future? Can you tell me?" This was a question that Chi Yu had always been puzzled about. He knew that when that day came, the passage to Earth from the various evil planes would be opened. However, when exactly would that day be? What kind of day would it be? That was what Chi Yu wanted to know the most. Apollo nodded. "Of course I can tell you. In our world, which is what you humans call the solar system, there was a special phenomenon in the sky. This kind of celestial phenomenon would only appear once every hundreds of thousands of years, or even longer. This phenomenon was called the alignment of the 9 stars. On the day of the alignment of the 9 stars, the radiance and righteousness of the sun would be completely blocked. The evil aura would fill the world. The 9 planets that belong to the sun would form a straight line with the sun and revolve at the same time. In a sense, this time could be frozen in an instant. The opening of the planes only needed enough evil energy to maintain it. Then the alignment of the 9 stars would continue. In this way, darkness would envelop our world. Be it the divine realm or the heavenly realm, they would be forever isolated and would not be able to help Earth. With Satan's strength and years of preparation, he would definitely be able to connect with the energy of the passage and use the evil aura of the alignment of the 9 stars to freeze time. When all the obstacles on Earth were swept away by him, he would be the overlord of Earth. Hades, the king of the underworld, had the same idea. Who wouldn't want to occupy the source of all the planes? Even in our God realm, it's not like we don't have such thoughts. However, we understood that if we really did that, we would destroy the balance of our world. Even if we succeeded, I'm afraid that the entire solar system would experience a huge change. However, hell and the underworld do not care about the consequences. I think you would agree with this point. Chi Yu nodded and frowned slightly. I understand what you mean. However, I feel that with Satan's power, how could he control the 9 planets of the solar system and maintain the alignment of the 9 stars? This is very difficult for me to understand. I have seen the huge amount of energy in the universe before. Not to mention the 9 planets of the solar system, even a small planet from another galaxy could almost destroy Earth. You have to know that the size of that small planet was only 1,000th of Earth. I've already told Rain Eye that I've been to the infernal world and fought with Satan. I admit that Satan's power is indeed stronger than mine, but it's not to the extent that I can't resist him. I believe that it is impossible for me to rely on my own power to change the planet. Satan's power is only slightly stronger than mine. Naturally, it is impossible for him to do things that I cannot do. Apollo smiled and shook his head. No, you still don't fully understand what I mean. The 9 stars alignment only appears once in hundreds of thousands of years. How can it be so easy to break? When the 9 stars alignment appears, the huge amount of evil energy that has accumulated in the solar system for hundreds of thousands of years will be mobilized at that moment. It will become the driving force of the 9 stars alignment and also the true bridge of the 9 stars alignment. When that happens, as long as a strong person from the evil plane uses his own body to trigger it, then the 9 stars alignment will become the most powerful evil formation. Within a year on Earth, the 9 stars alignment will be maintained and revolve around the Sun. In this situation, the power of the evil plane would increase greatly. The creatures of the evil plane who were not used to Earth's environment would be greatly weakened. The creatures from the evil plane who are not used to the environment on Earth will have no more scruples because Earth will also be shrouded in darkness. When Satan and Hades kill all the strong people from your plane, no one will be able to stop them. After his action, he can take advantage of the opportunity when the 9 stars alignment has not ended to change the channel between the various planes and Earth. Oh right, you may not know. Although it is extremely difficult to reach Earth from our various planes, especially for strong people who have reached a certain level, but it is much easier to travel from Earth to our various planes. That is why you and Yamu were able to cross over to the divine realm so easily. If Satan succeeds, then he will definitely completely seal the channel between our planes of justice and Earth, and completely open the channel between the evil plane and Earth. Even if the 9 stars alignment ends, there will be no more obstacles. When that time comes, the entire world will be in the hands of him and Hades. He only needs to unite with Hades to completely wipe out the small evil and righteous planes. Then, he will gather his strength to destroy our divine realm and heavenly realm. Then, that will form a situation where the solar system is unified. That is what Satan and Hades really want to do. At that time, there will only be one ending on Earth, and that is all humans will become slaves of evil creatures. That is definitely not what we want to see. At the same time, it should not be what you want to see either. Chi-Yu nodded solemnly. From the mouth of the sun god Apollo, he finally learned what Earth was going to face. Apollo's speculation about Hades of the underworld had been completely confirmed by Apollo. The strong people in hell were not scary. At least, Chi-Yu believed that even if he could not defeat Satan, with the joint efforts of the Zodiac Guardian warriors, he was confident that he could lead everyone to fight against Satan and Lucifer. However, hell did not only have strong people like Satan. When he had been in hell, he had killed the Burning Legion's hellish creatures as easily as taking something out of his pocket. However, that was something that only he could do. On Earth, the only people who could contend with the hellish creatures were probably the mecha warriors of the United States. However, the number of mecha warriors was too small after all. In addition to his own guardian of the East, Yamu and her Greek guardian, and the many experts of the Vatican, it was impossible for them to fight against the 100,000-strong army of the Burning Legion. At most, they could only maintain the situation and rely on the number of experts on their side to gradually nibble away at the strength of the other party. However, now that there was the underworld, then, the situation was far less optimistic than he had imagined. As long as the underworld king Hades could have the strength of Satan's younger brother, Sanao, and the underworld army in his hands, that was enough to give Chi-Yu a headache. After thinking about it, Chi-Yu said, Yamu did not bring me to the divine realm just to hear how terrible the disaster that Earth is about to face. I want to hear what your suggestions are. His impression of Apollo was better than that of Yamu. At least, Apollo's frankness had won his respect. To be able to not hide the fact that the divine realm had once wanted to rule over Earth, this alone proved that the divine realm was indeed sincere in cooperating with him. The sun god Apollo said, For this matter, His Majesty God Emperor, who is also my father, the great Zeus, racked his brains. After all kinds of calculations, he still felt that only by completely uniting all the experts on Earth could we resolve this crisis as much as possible. However, my father did not have absolute confidence. After all, you also know that it is very difficult for experts of our level to reach Earth. The restrictions of the passage to the divine realm are even stronger than those in hell. You and Yamu originally belonged to Earth, so the restrictions of the passage to Earth from the divine realm are much smaller. This is also the reason why you can return to Earth from Hell. Of course, this also has a lot to do with your own powerful strength. Cooperation is the only way now. Although Chi Yu was still unwilling, he had to admit that what Apollo said was the truth. He pondered and said, "You should already know what happened between me and Yamu. Cooperation? How can I still trust her? Moreover, the hatred between us is not so easily resolved. From your point of view, perhaps Yamu did not do anything wrong, and is the representative of benevolence and righteousness. However, from my point of view, she is only a woman who lied to me and caused the death of my friends and lovers. It is not impossible for us to cooperate temporarily. Otherwise, I would have killed my way to Greece to settle the score. However, it is impossible for me to cooperate with her directly. At most, I will do my best to help them when they fight against Hell and the underworld. There is one thing you should understand. Regardless of whether it is the underworld or Hell, when they descend, they will only be in the west. At least for a period of time, the east will not be threatened. Moreover, in the entire Earth, the Eastern Guardians are the most powerful. If you want to cooperate, first of all, please show your sincerity." The way Apollo looked at Chi Yu changed. In his eyes, the human race was originally only an extremely weak race. However, this man in front of him had such a powerful aura and awe-inspiring aura. Even he could not figure out the true extent of his strength. Of course we have sincerity. Although Athena has hurt you before, there is one thing you may not know. However, there is one thing you may not know. When Rain Eyes inherited the divinity of Athena, she could not control herself most of the time. Her inner emotions would be suppressed by the divinity of Athena at critical moments, so she could not express her heart's desire, or could not act according to her heart's desire. Therefore, I hope you will not blame her anymore. The pain in her heart is definitely not any less than what you have experienced. As the goddess of war and wisdom, Athena will only place benefits at the forefront when the earth is in danger. This is done subconsciously. If we do not have the sincerity to cooperate this time, the great Emperor Zeus would not have allowed Yamu to bring you to the realm of the gods. Chi Yu's eyes flickered slightly. Yamu's sorrowful eyes flashed across his mind. "Then tell me about your sincerity." Although Apollo's words had moved Chi Yu, it was not enough to change his opinion of Yamu. After all, the hatred from the beginning was so deep. Apollo said, "Because it is impossible for the powerhouses of the realm of the gods to reach the earth, before the alignment of the 5 planets, we will do our best to bring as much of the power of the realm of the gods to the human world. The great Emperor Zeus has already gone into seclusion with the 8 most powerful main gods in the realm of the god. During his seclusion, he has refined the divine chi of the realm of the gods. When Yamu returns to the human world, she will combine the divine chi with her 12 constellation guardians. Thus, their overall strength will reach an unprecedented peak. From a certain perspective, their combined strength could even contend against a god-emperor. Of course, this power will be withdrawn by the emperor-god after the Earth's crisis ends. But under such circumstances, Yamu and her constellation guardians can become the strongest on the Earth. I can't guarantee anything else, but at least they can compete with most of the power of the underworld. The realm of the gods has made such a decision, and it is the same for the heavenly realm. After all, the Emperor Heaven has many believers on Earth, and he does not want Earth to be ruled by the underworld and hell. As for what they will do, I am not sure, but the power of the heavenly realm is not weaker than ours. When the time comes, with the assistance of the guardians of the East, we will definitely be able to deal a heavy blow to the underworld and hell. This is one of our sincerity. In addition, according to Athena, you have a special energy, which is the power of the origin of nature. This energy allows you to assimilate any other elemental energy. Also, you have 4 main types of attack energy, which are thunder, fire, wind, and water. Am I right? Chi Yu nodded and said, "Yes, it is." Why? Are you going to give me some divine weapons? Apollo shook his head and said, Of course not. Divine weapons of the realm of the gods can only be used by the gods. You do not belong to the realm of the gods, so how can you get a divine weapon? However, our sincerity is no less than giving you divine weapons. In the realm of the gods, the way to the human world is the same as the way to hell. There are two situations. Low-level gods can enter Earth through the ordinary way, but if they only use their divine sense, their strength will be greatly reduced, which is of no help to you. The other main way is the divine wind valley in the realm of the gods, which is completely blocked. There is a divine wind there that even the gods fear. It is a place that we can never cross. Among your energy there is a wind attribute. I can feel that your strength has far exceeded the limits of the special energy on Earth. It is impossible for you to improve any further on Earth. Yamu has also reached that level because she, who has inherited Athena's divinity, has reached the power of the goddess Athena. She is a god. However, not being able to improve on Earth does not mean that you cannot improve in the realm of the gods. After all, we are in different planes. Therefore, if you want to return to Earth, you must pass through the divine wind valley. There, you will obtain the power you want, which will further enhance your strength. That will be a great power that belongs to you. Of course, if you are unable to pass the test of the divine wind valley, then you do not have the qualifications to cooperate with our God world. Otherwise, you will be destroyed by the divine wind valley. For him, the most attractive thing now is to be destroyed by the divine wind valley, or to stay in the realm of the gods forever. After listening to Apollo's sincerity, Chi-Yu could not help but feel excited. For him, what attracted him the most now was, obviously, it was to improve his strength, especially to restore the power of the Xianyuan divine sword. This was the most important. However, if he wanted to restore the Xianyuan divine sword, he needed to upgrade his earth fire thundercloud force to the real 9th cloud level, and have a heavenly fire that surpassed the earth's plane. If he wanted to upgrade it to the 9th cloud level, he had to upgrade all 4 types of thundercloud force at the same time. Among his 4 types of thundercloud force, only thundercloud force had reached the peak of the 9th cloud level. Could the divine wind valley that Apollo mentioned upgrade his wind thundercloud force to that level? Every time he upgraded one type of thundercloud force, his strength would increase greatly. If he really upgraded it to the 9th cloud level, even he could not imagine how strong he would be. Apollo looked at Chi-Yu and continued, Now, you should be able to confirm our sincerity. Are you willing to cooperate with the realm of the gods? Chi-Yu smiled faintly and said, If my answer is no, will you attack me? Apollo revealed a bitter smile and slowly shook his head, saying, No, regardless of whether you agree or not, I will send you to the divine wind valley. Chi-Yu looked at him in surprise and asked, Why? Apollo sighed and said, The crisis that Earth is about to face is also a huge threat to the realm of the gods. As long as there is a possibility of attacking Hell and the Netherworld, we will do our best to support them. You are no exception. Even if you are not willing to cooperate with us, if you obtain the power of the divine wind valley and return to Earth, it will also serve as a deterrent to the Netherworld and Hell, weakening their strength to a certain extent. If we destroy you, what benefit will it bring to us? We might as well let you go back. Moreover, we are not Satan from Hell. We are only close to humans, even if you do not believe in the realm of the god. Hearing Apollo's words, Chi-Yu could not help but be slightly moved. The gods of the realm of the gods were indeed fundamentally different from the demons of Hell. His favorable impression of Apollo increased a little, and a smile appeared on his face. Although I know that you want to help me improve my strength, you only want to make use of me. But I still have to thank you. As for the cooperation, I can only say that I will play it by ear. I cannot guarantee that I will help you, because when the 9-star alignment appears, Hell and the Netherworld will both descend on the west. Don't you think it is strange? If a huge crisis also appears in the east, how can I help you? Then, I can't even take care of myself, so how can I help you? So, I can't promise you anything now. I can only say that if it is within my capabilities, I will do my best to help you eliminate the crisis in the netherworld and hell. Apollo smiled, and a hint of approval appeared on his handsome face. You are not a person who makes promises easily. But your words are more important than a promise. If, in the future, you have the chance to come to the realm of the gods again, I think we will become friends. Chi-Yu laughed heartily. What? You don't see me as a friend now? Apollo said in a bad mood. Now? You almost raped my sister just now. How can I see you as a friend? It is already very kind of me not to challenge you to a duel. But I have to admit that you are indeed worthy of Athena, if she is not the goddess of virginity. Hearing Apollo mention Yamu, Chi-Yu's face could not help but sink. He said coldly, You better not mention her in front of me in the future. All right. Send me to the Divine Wind Valley. I don't want my companions and lovers to worry because of me. After fighting with Yamu on the high seas for so long, he did not know how worried Ryue and the others were. If it was not for the Divine Wind Valley that could improve his thundercloud force, Chi-Yu really could not wait to return to Earth. Apollo nodded and said, Come with me. A golden light suddenly lit up, and a huge energy light condensed in midair. The 12 golden crows turned into 12 golden rays of light, and a special golden carriage made entirely of energy appeared in midair. Apollo sat in the carriage and waved at Chi-Yu. His figure flashed, and Chi-Yu appeared beside Apollo. Being able to ride in the carriage of the sun god seemed to be a very good thing. The golden carriage seat was very soft, and the softness produced by the energy gave Chi-Yu a very strange feeling of enjoyment. Actually, rather than saying it was a carriage, it was more appropriate to call it a bird carriage. The 12 golden crows were also pulling this carriage. The bird carriage moved. Under the pull of the 12 golden crows, it turned into an astonishing stream of light in midair, and the surrounding scenery flashed by rapidly. It was very difficult to see clearly. However, on the bird carriage, Chi-Yu could not even feel the existence of a trace of wind. This was like a sealed space. Not only was it very comfortable, but even the air was gently massaging him instead of blowing on him. Apollo, you really know how to enjoy yourself. Chi-Yu looked at the golden light in front of him with some admiration. The rich aura of light made him feel very comfortable, and the energy in his body was stimulated by the aura of light to produce a microcirculation effect, which was not a small benefit to his body. Apollo glanced at Chi-Yu and said with a smile, Do you know? You are the first guest on my carriage pulled by the 12 golden crows. Even my father Zeus has never ridden on it. He has never ridden on it before. Chi-Yu glanced at him and said with a smile, If that's the case, I should feel honored. Apollo made a somewhat comical shrug. That depends on whether you think so or not. Do you think I would think so? Apollo and Chi-Yu looked at each other and said in unison, No. Saying that, they could not help but look at each other and laugh, as if they appreciated each other. It caused the atmosphere between them to become unprecedentedly harmonious. The Divine Wind Valley, in the God realm, was like the Canyon of Demons in Hell. It was an absolute forbidden area, and no god would come here, because the divine wind in the Divine Wind Valley was an absolute destructive force to them. Whoever came here would only have one result, and that was the destruction of both body and soul. The divine wind here was like the earth's lightning in hell, and even Zeus was not immune to it. The Divine Wind Valley was a cyan basin. In the distance, Chi-Yu could already see the outer appearance of the Divine Wind Valley. The entire basin was surrounded by green mountains that were at least 3,000 meters tall. If not for the fact that they were flying at a high enough altitude, it would have been very difficult to see what was inside. The 12 golden crows slowly came to a stop under the control of the sun god Apollo. At this moment, they were about 10 kilometers away from the Divine Wind Valley. Although they had not reached the Divine Wind Valley yet, Chi-Yu could already clearly feel the strong energy waves coming from the divine wind valley. Yes, it was the energy of the wind. However, the energy of the wind did not seem to be blowing on the body, but on the soul. Apollo looked in the direction of the divine wind valley with a serious expression and said, "My friend from Earth, I can only send you here. I hope that we can always be friends in the future. I, the sun god Apollo, am proud to have a human friend like you." Chi-Yu extended his right hand and tightly grasped Apollo's right hand. Both of their energies exploded at the same time, and the 12 golden crows scattered in an instant. The enormous energy ripples caused the surrounding air to distort. Chi-Yu's eyes contained deep meaning as he said, "In the future, the arrogance you will feel because of me will only increase." Apollo smiled and said, "I think so too. Go, my friend, I can only send you here. I believe that you will be able to return to Earth from here. Take care." Chi-Yu floated up and said, "Take care, my friend from the god realm, Apollo." The divine wind valley had its first guest in thousands of years, a guest from Earth. Chapter 3:13. Yamu's figure slowly appeared beside Apollo. At this moment, there was no longer any human expression on her face. She was now the real goddess Athena. "Apollo, even if my choice was wrong, there's no turning back now. This human strength has far exceeded my expectations. Yamu is right. If I hadn't forcefully disobeyed her wishes back then, perhaps the situation on Earth would be different now." Apollo did not look at Athena. He shook his head gently and said, "Sister, I'm going to see Father now. I'll suggest to him that before your powers return to Earth, Father should completely seal your spiritual power. Let Yamu control your body and energy completely until the end of this crisis on Earth. I believe that you, who are completely under her control, can truly save Earth from this crisis." Athena's body trembled. She looked at her brother who had always been on her side. "Apollo, have you really made up your mind? Do you really think that humans can control our divine powers and do this well?" Apollo said calmly, "You're the goddess of war and wisdom. Athena, do you still not understand? The emotions that humans possess are the greatest strength that we don't possess. Sometimes, emotions are the most powerful weapon. So what if you're a human? Haven't you seen Chi-Yu's situation? Do you think that you're still a match for him now? Not to mention you, even I can't defeat him. Moreover, he's the same as the first time you met him. He still has unparalleled potential. No one knows how far he'll go in the future. But I'm sure that in the future, his achievements will definitely not be below Father's." Athena slowly lowered her proud head. She sighed deeply and said, "Perhaps you're right. But I'm also sure that if my spiritual power is really sealed and Athena's divine powers are completely controlled by Yamu on Earth, I'm afraid that her final outcome will be to sink into oblivion. I can deeply feel her pain. Forget it, let's do as you say. Consider it my compensation to her. I hope that we can redeem what happened in the past." Apollo looked at Yamu in surprise. "Sister, you're smarter than I thought." Athena blinked and smiled. "Don't forget, I am the goddess of war and wisdom. Even Father God often praises my wisdom. Let's go. I will go with you to see Father God. It's time to give the energy to Yamu." The two figures disappeared into thin air. Other than the huge divine aura that was left behind, the sky around the divine wind valley had already become quiet. After bidding farewell to Apollo, Chi-Yu flew towards the divine wind valley at a moderate speed. The closer he got to the divine wind valley, the stronger the feeling in his heart became. There wasn't a trace of wind, but the berserk nature of the wind energy had reached an unprecedented level. That's right, the wind here wasn't as simple as the wind on the surface. What was here was a soul storm that could attack one's mind. Of course, unlike Yu Yun's soul storm, Yu Yun's ability came from his powerful spiritual power. The soul storm here, on the other hand, came from the energy of the wind. The ultimate wind. That's right. This was the ultimate polar wind in this world. When the wind reached this level, it would be extremely cold. When the wind reached this level, it would no longer be training one's body, but one's soul. No wonder Apollo said that no god in the divine world would dare to go against the divine wind here. Under the influence of this divine wind, the soul's fire would be extinguished, and the end result would be the destruction of one's body and soul. Chi Yu didn't enter the divine wind valley directly. Although he already understood everything here, it didn't mean that he had the ability to deal with everything here. Under the huge energy fluctuations, he stopped on the mountain peak beside the Divine Wind Valley and looked down at the situation in the Divine Wind Valley. Just as Chi Yu expected, the Divine Wind Valley was very quiet. There weren't any hurricanes. The entire basin was about a few dozen square kilometers. Surrounded by mountains, it had an irregular shape. A faint light flickered, and the entire Divine Wind Valley appeared to be covered in a misty, glossy green light. The green light was very faint, and it wasn't enough to obstruct one's vision. However, this seemingly gentle light contained the divine wind that sun god Apollo had mentioned. Although he was only at the edge of the Divine Wind Valley, Chi Yu could clearly feel the power of the divine wind. His body didn't move at all, but the energy in his body was already circulating at full speed. The divine wind constantly attacked his body, and the barrier on the surface of his body couldn't stop it at all. His soul was constantly being attacked by the divine wind, causing Chi Yu's mind to go blank again and again. What a strong energy! Feeling the divine wind's attack, Chi Yu couldn't help but feel a little frightened. If it wasn't for the fact that his mental strength was strong enough, if it wasn't for the fact that he didn't enter the Divine Wind Valley carefully and stayed here instead, perhaps at this moment, his soul would have been destroyed by the divine wind even though his body still existed. What kind of wind was this? Such a terrifying power had actually reached such a level. However, although he was very surprised, he was also very excited. This was because only this kind of wind could allow him to upgrade the thundercloud force to a higher level. The 4 types of thundercloud force that he possessed needed a qualitative change, and not a simple increase in energy. Otherwise, he could have done it on Earth. He completely restrained his spiritual power and wrapped his soul aura in his mind. No matter how the divine wind attacked him, Chi Yu remained motionless. Sure enough, his choice was very correct. Under the protection of the condensed spiritual power, Chi Yu's soul would no longer be attacked by the divine wind, and the frequent blankness in his mind had completely disappeared. Of course, Chi Yu wouldn't feel excited because of this. After all, he was only at the edge of the Divine Wind Valley. The deeper he went, the more terrifying the divine wind would be. If he wanted to return to Earth, he had to reach the center of the Divine Wind Valley. Only there would be a true passage back to Earth. Sitting cross-legged on the top of the mountain, Chi Yu didn't move forward even though his soul was protected. He believed that although his spiritual power had been upgraded to an extremely powerful level after several qualitative changes, it probably hadn't reached a level that surpassed Zeus. Even Zeus didn't dare to take the risk to enter the Divine Wind Valley, so how could he rely on the protection of his spiritual power to enter? Moreover, he didn't come to the Divine Wind Valley just to return to Earth. At the same time, it was also the best opportunity for him to upgrade his thundercloud force. He wanted to upgrade his power. So, he had to understand the divine wind in front of him first. Therefore, Chi Yu sat down. Although his spiritual power was restrained, his internal body perception was raised to the strongest level. The pearl-shaped thundercloud force operated slowly, and under Chi Yu's precise control, it was completely restrained in his dantian. Chi Yu realized that when his thundercloud force was upgraded to its current bottleneck, it could no longer be transformed into other thundercloud force. The energy balls that were like blue pearls, even though they were in his body, they were still so solid. Now, the thundercloud force had become Chi Yu's best attack weapon. After restraining the thundercloud force, Chi Yu began the energy transformation process. In order to understand the divine wind here, he first had to transform the energy in his body into the thundercloud force that was the closest to the divine wind. The transformation process began. The thundercloud force could be said to be the most widely used among Chi Yu's thundercloud force. After all, the thundercloud force would be used when moving, attacking, and flying. The attack of the wind thundercloud force. It was the one with the strongest penetrating power among Chi Yu's 4 thundercloud force types, and its energy intensity was also the sharpest. For example, Chi Yu's Kirin Shura blade mainly used the wind thundercloud force. A faint green light continued to condense in his body, filling every corner of his meridians. The fire and water thundercloud force were completely restrained. Under Chi Yu's deliberate action, the 2 thundercloud force were transformed into the wind thundercloud force with the help of the source of nature energy. The green light in his body became more and more viscous. It could be said that at this moment, apart from the thundercloud force converged in his dantian, Chi Yu's body was only filled with the wind thundercloud force. A faint layer of green light appeared on the surface of his body, making Chi Yu's body seem to be integrated with the energy in the divine wind valley. Chi Yu was not in a hurry to absorb the wind thundercloud force here, because he could clearly feel that the wind energy here was a special wind energy that directly attacked the soul. It was different from his own wind thundercloud force. Under such circumstances, if he were to absorb it rashly, it was very likely to have the opposite effect. Every time the huge energy fluctuation appeared, there would be a certain energy characteristic. Therefore, what Chi Yu needed to do now was to feel it. He needed to feel the similarities between the wind energy here and his wind thundercloud force. Only in this way could he possibly transform the divine wind here into his own energy, so as to achieve the purpose of promoting the wind thundercloud force to a higher level. The green wind thundercloud force gradually filled Chi Yu's body. Under the effect of the source of nature, his energy was soon raised to the peak state. The red gold armor had been completely dyed green and gold, and a faint airflow flowed around Chi Yu's body. At this time, the benefits of the source of nature were fully revealed. This was because when it transformed energy, it would automatically compress and filter the energy. In this way, the wind thundercloud force in Chi Yu's body became very pure and dense. The green energy completely turned into a liquid state in his body, moving rhythmically like water. Every time the energy fluctuated, Chi Yu could clearly feel the changes in the wind thundercloud force. Even he was a little surprised that when all the energy was transformed into this thundercloud force, there would be such a good effect. The energy fluctuations became more and more intense, and a faint aura constantly invaded Chi Yu's body. When he completely transformed his energy into the wind thundercloud force, his spiritual power was released from his body in coordination with the wind thundercloud force. Finally, he began the process of testing. With a lot of experience in cultivation, Chi Yu was very careful at this time. It was not easy for him to become so powerful. The more he was careful, the more he had to ensure that he would not be hurt before he improved his energy. The contact between the wind gave Chi Yu a special and strange feeling. The wind thundercloud force that he released seemed to be called by the divine wind, and it felt like it was about to leave his body. This scared Chi Yu so much that he hurriedly withdrew the thundercloud force. Yes, the divine wind here was another form of wind energy. Chi Yu was sure of this. The powerful energy fluctuations of the thundercloud force resonated with the wind energy here. In hell, the divine thunder was the nemesis of the evil aura of hell. In the realm of the gods, although every god was very powerful, they all possessed light energy. It was impossible for them to have the same attribute as the divine wind energy. Therefore, even someone as powerful as Zeus could not sense the mysteries of the wind energy here. Gradually, Chi Yu's senses became more and more profound. He discovered that although they were both of the wind attribute, the order of the wind energy molecules here was worlds apart from his own. Moreover, what surprised him even more was that the wind energy in the Divine Wind Valley itself seemed to be a huge soul body, not an energy body. This discovery immediately gave Chi-Yu a ray of hope. How could he absorb the soul energy? He could only absorb it by relying on the soul, and not by relying on the conversion of the source of nature. At this thought, Chi-Yu made a decision in his heart. Excessive hesitation was not in his character. If he thought about it, he would do it, and try to be as careful as possible. This was Chi-Yu's current method. He withdrew the energy of the source of nature to protect his body. When he forced the thundercloud force out of his body again, it mixed with his own soul energy. Although the soul was not the source of a human being like life, it was the spiritual pillar of a human being. If life energy was the human body, then soul energy was the human brain. It was also the most mysterious kind of energy. Under such circumstances, even Chi-Yu had to be careful. Once his soul energy was damaged, it would be more terrifying than the damage to his life energy. It was very likely that his soul would be destroyed. When that happened, even if he did not die, he would become an idiot. Therefore, when he mixed his soul energy with the thundercloud force, Chi-Yu only released less than 1/10 of his soul energy. Under the effect of the wind energy, he released it on the surface of his skin and carefully came into contact with his identity in the Divine Wind Valley again. Chi-Yu's choice was correct. This time, there was no suction and repulsion. In an instant, Chi-Yu found that his body seemed to have completely integrated into the world of the Divine Wind Valley. The thundercloud force and the divine wind had the same attribute, and in addition to the characteristics of the soul, the divine wind would no longer repel Chi-Yu. This situation was obviously impossible for any god in the divine world, but Chi-Yu had done it easily. His body became lighter, and all the pressure disappeared. Chi-Yu was surprised to find that even if he walked into the Divine Wind Valley again, he would no longer be hurt by the Divine Wind Valley. In other words, it had become very easy for him to return to Earth, even easier than when he passed through the lightning ball in hell. The thundercloud force on the surface of his body and his soul had already made Chi-Yu a part of the Divine Wind Valley. With this discovery, Chi-Yu began to call out to the divine wind. Ever since he had obtained the source of nature, this was the first time that Chi-Yu did not use it to absorb energy. He floated up, and wrapped by the wind and his soul, he quietly entered the Divine Wind Valley. The divine wind in the Divine Wind Valley made Chi-Yu feel so small. The divine wind energy here was much larger than he had imagined. This was an incomparably huge soul. However, this soul did not seem to have its own consciousness. Otherwise, Chi-Yu would not be as relaxed as he was now. The more he entered the Divine Wind Valley, the more obvious this feeling became. Chi-Yu clearly found that the wind element here was so large that he had never seen it before. Moreover, the huge wind energy that was full of soul power had cleansed this world of all other energy fluctuations. The huge energy aura made Chi-Yu exclaim, and his heart was filled with ecstasy. There was no need for the source of nature to transform it. This was the purest thundercloud force, so what Chi-Yu was going to do next was very simple. That was to cultivate. Just like when he first mastered the ascending cloud technique, he would carry out the most basic cultivation. He would use his body to absorb the wind energy molecules in the air to strengthen his own energy. If he had cultivated like this on Earth, it would not have any effect on Chi-Yu. Even during the era of the ancient behemoths where the energy elements were abundant, the result would be the same. However, in the Divine Wind Valley, this situation had completely changed. Under Chi-Yu's natural cultivation, the divine wind that was full of soul aura actually flowed into his body from his limbs and bones like a spring. The huge amount of wind energy instantly mixed with the wind thundercloud force in his body, and did not produce any feeling of rejection. With a sudden inspiration, Chi-Yu completely released his soul energy and mixed it with the wind thundercloud force in his body, achieving a completely parallel effect with the divine wind. Under this situation, he became a part of the divine wind, and the divine wind also became a part of him. Naturally, it carried out the infusion. Ever since he started cultivating, Chi-Yu had never felt such a huge energy input, even when he was absorbing the lightning ball. He had never felt like this before. The process of absorbing the lightning ball was extremely painful. Every time that huge amount of thunder energy wreaked havoc in his body, it would make him feel like he was better off dead than alive. However, the infusion of the divine wind this time, it only made him feel that the wind energy was becoming more and more abundant, and he did not even feel like he was expanding. In this extremely comfortable state, Chi-Yu completely relaxed his body and mind, allowing his soul to merge with the divine wind's soul, and easily absorbed the huge soul of the wind here. If the sun god Apollo was here and could see Chi-Yu, he would definitely be so shocked that his jaw would drop to the ground. In the middle of the most terrifying divine wind valley in the god realm, a human was actually sitting there in enjoyment. And the divine wind in the divine wind valley was like his best protection. It surrounded his body and slowly formed a green energy whirlpool. The green light did not rotate very quickly, but with every rotation, it was injected into every part of Chi-Yu's body. Chi-Yu's body slowly floated up from the ground under the effect of the divine wind valley's soul of wind. The pure gold armor on his body had automatically retracted. In this world that belonged to him, he did not need any protection at all. The divine wind had already become his closest companion. It was his most loyal guardian, constantly increasing his energy, and always protecting every corner of his body. Even Chi-Yu did not know how much time had passed. When he woke up again, he was shocked to find that the surroundings of his body had become a green-gold color. He could not even see anything in the outside world. What was going on? Chi-Yu was so shocked that he stood up from his cross-legged position. Suddenly, he clearly heard a shattering sound. The crisp sound came from in front of him. Immediately after, he saw a crack appear in the solid green light in front of him. The crack slowly spread, and gradually covered every direction of his body. At this moment, Chi-Yu's body seemed to be wrapped in a huge cocoon, and this cocoon was formed by the green light. The enormous energy undulations caused Chi-Yu to be dumbstruck. With a soft ding, the green cocoon had already turned into specks of green light that floated around his body. Before Chi-Yu could react, the green spots of light had completely integrated into his body. With a bang, Chi-Yu felt an unprecedented sound in his mind. Everything in his body had changed. He could clearly see every corner of his body, and he was actually a spectator. At this moment, his body seemed to have become the universe, and his spiritual power was roaming in this vast universe. What kind of feeling was this? Even Chi-Yu could not explain it clearly. He only felt that his spiritual power had become so strong that it could not be described. He could even accurately grasp the nucleus of every cell in his body. Gradually, the feeling of his spiritual power gradually disappeared under the control of his consciousness. The divine wind valley once again appeared in front of him. The green light was still there, but this time, Chi-Yu could hear the cheers and joyful voices of these wind souls. They constantly fluctuated around his body, as if they were comforting his heart, and also as if they were dancing around his body, like little green fairies. They were communicating with their closest companions. Moved, what kind of feeling was that? Chi-Yu could not clearly describe the feeling in his heart at this moment. He did not need to deliberately examine the situation of his body, but he already knew that he had succeeded. This was what the divine wind had told him. Yes, he had succeeded. The thunder that was close to the peak existed in the form of the thunder bead in his body. But what was the wind that was close to the peak? There were many small green cyclones. They happily circulated in Chi-Yu's body, and they shone brightly with the thunder bead. They called out to each other intimately. Although they did not fuse, they were very close to each other. Even Chi-Yu himself could not tell whether the cyan cyclones were gas, liquid, or solid. That sparkling and translucent cyan light flickered with a faint golden light. This was the first time he had experienced such a wonderful feeling. At the same time, he also obtained the soul of the wind, and finally completely understood the meaning of the wind. Yes, every kind of energy had its own soul. Chi-Yu was sure of this. His spiritual power had already turned into a golden cyclone in his mind, and had completely fused with his soul. This feeling that came from the soul made Chi-Yu's mind become incomparably clear. Every simple feeling was so subtle. Chi-Yu instantly understood. In the infernal realm, lightning had shown him its tyrannical side, but in the divine wind valley, wind had shown him its free side. Yes, the true meaning of the wind was freedom, and the true meaning of the thunder was domineering. The violent ball of lightning strengthened his body again and again. When he fought with Yamu again, his body could even withstand the explosive power of the divine weapon of the divine realm. Because his body had completely become the body of a god, under the bombardment of the ball of lightning, and the thundercloud force had reached the peak of perfection, it had become the most powerful body. It even surpassed the body of a god. And here, in the divine wind valley, what he was being tempered was the soul, or rather, the soul. The fusion of wind and wind was also the fusion of soul and soul. Chi-Yu's soul had already reached an unprecedented strength. Even if his body was destroyed in the future, his soul would never dissipate. This was the current state of Chi-Yu. In a sense, the current Chi-Yu was already an immortal god. In terms of level, he had even surpassed the level of Zeus and Satan. His body slowly ascended, and the enlightenment in his heart made Chi-Yu's eyes overflow with tears. He finally understood the true meaning of his body. At the same time, he also understood that when he truly reached the level of 9 clouds, then he would completely become an existence that surpassed the gods. The huge energy waves could even let him go to heaven and hell, and nothing could restrict him anymore. At this moment, he could even be sure that his strength was not inferior to Satan's. And this was only the peak of the 2 types of thundercloud force. The greenish-golden light wrapped around Chi-Yu's body, and everything around him seemed to become so slow. However, in just a moment, his body had already rushed from the center of the divine wind valley to the top of the sky. Everything around him was distorted by the greenish-golden light, and his body quietly disappeared. This time there was no pressure. In other words, plane travel was no longer a threat to Chi-Yu. Green wind, blue lightning, 2 peaks, and half a powerhouse. This was the current portrayal of Chi-Yu. The familiar spatial passageway had already turned into a rainbow. Chi-Yu could even clearly see the changes in every energy. This was the profound mystery of a powerful soul. His soul had already reached another level. Congratulations, Chi-Yu. A joyful voice rang in Chi-Yu's heart. Chi-Yu recognized that it was the voice of the Kongdong Seal's spirit. Senior Yin-Ling, Chi-Yu smiled and communicated with Yin-Ling in his heart. At this moment, he suddenly felt that he did not need Yin-Ling's invitation to enter Yin-Ling's 5 elements domain easily. Moreover, the communication between him and Yin-Ling had already reached the level of the soul. Chi-Yu, do you know? Only now do you have the right to control these divine weapons. Your power has risen to the level of the soul. In other words, it has risen to a level that is above us. You have finally understood the mystery of the soul. The soul is free like the wind. It can travel anywhere. When your soul is strong enough, you can even travel in the universe, just like the great god of water and god of fire. Only with a clear understanding of the soul can you become a true powerhouse in the universe in the future. Chi-Yu, from now on, you are my true master. I am willing to follow by your side forever and never leave you. I have finally found a master that is suitable for me. Ever since I was created, this is the first time I have felt touched. Thank you, Chi-Yu. You have allowed me to find a new feeling. My ability has also improved because of you. Now, the Kongdong seal has regained the true effect of the immortal seal. Qiyu said joyfully, Senior Yinling, I should be the one thanking you. Without you, I don't know how many times I would have died. It is my greatest honor to be able to do something for you. Silly boy, do you still call me senior now? You can call me whatever you want to call Xianyuan Hun. Don't expect me to call you master. Qiyu laughed and said, Brother Yinling, I have always wanted to call you that, but I am afraid that it would be too abrupt. At this point, his mood suddenly became a little gloomy. It is a pity that Brother Xianyuan is not by my side. Otherwise, everything would be more perfect. If he saw my progress, I think he would be very happy. I finally have the ability to use him. Yinling comforted him, Don't worry. Xianyuan is like you, an undying cockroach. I believe that you will be able to make him return to you, right? You've already done the impossible twice. This has already proven your potential. The will of the heavens exists in the unseen world, and a truly powerful Qilin has finally been born. I am very glad that I can see this coming. In this aspect, I have surpassed Xianyuan. Ha 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 ha. Chapter 3:14. The space shuttling continued. Qiyu no longer needed to activate his energy to protect his body. He could pass through this space naturally and quietly. He was very clear about his current situation. Wind and thunder moved, and his energy increased instantly. His power seemed to have reached another peak. Not long after Yinling's voice disappeared, a low and gloomy voice rang in Qiyu's mind. Qiyu, I don't know if I should congratulate you or give you a blow. But at least the current you has made me feel a sense of crisis. It was the Bull Demon King. The low voice belonged to Old Bull. Qiyu didn't say anything and just listened to the Bull Demon King. He knew that the increase in his power meant that the Bull Demon King couldn't possibly separate from his body. Although he still couldn't figure out Old Bull's true background, the sense of danger he felt from Old Bull was decreasing as his power increased. Comprehending soul power allowed you to truly enter the world of expert. From now on, you can really be treated as an enemy by me. Although we aren't on the same level. However, you have already made me feel a strong threat. This threat isn't your current power, but your potential. Old Bull's words were unprecedentedly sincere. At least, that was what Qiyu felt. He realized that Old Bull's emotions were a little off. However, he also understood many things from Old Bull's words. Old Bull, are you telling me that you have already reached this level long ago? Qiyu asked in a low voice. Bull Demon King said calmly, What do you think? Actually, in the past, I didn't treat you as an opponent. In other words, letting you use the life and death domain was, in a sense, intentional on my part. Otherwise, do you think you could use the Xianyuan sword to hurt my body with your power? Qiyu was stunned. He didn't think that Bull Demon King said this to cover up his failure. Old Bull's sincerity made him feel that everything was real. The joy in his heart gradually disappeared, and a faint fear gradually appeared in the depths of Qiyu's heart. Old cow, are you going to tell me? You can break through the life and death domain at any time. That's why I took you in as an envoy back then. To you, this is some kind of destination. Bull Demon King said, No, you are wrong. The reincarnation fruit was the fruit of the 3 great divine kings. It was also something that the water and fire gods had left in the human world. Even with my power, it's not enough to destroy the God King fruit's ability that can only be used once. I can't break the life and death domain. Qiyu was a little surprised and asked, If that's the case, then why did you let me capture you? Aren't you afraid that I'll sacrifice myself? Do you want me to destroy you too? The Bull Demon King said indifferently, Although I can't break the reincarnation fruit, it won't be that easy for you to destroy me. Ever since I came to this world, I have been pursuing the pinnacle of power, surpassing the peak of the gods, or in other words, following in the footsteps of the fire and water god. However, it was undoubtedly extremely difficult to reach that level. My power has already reached a level that you couldn't even imagine back then. Even the previous you couldn't continue to improve your power on Earth. You can imagine how difficult it is for me to improve my power. Even if I'm invincible on Earth, it can't satisfy my pursuit of power. The fire and water gods. That's what I'm pursuing. The appearance of the reincarnation fruit gave me hope. To be more precise, it's the origin of nature in your body that gave me hope. I know that only through your origin of nature can I ascend to a higher level. Obviously, you won't let me get away with it easily. Therefore, although it seemed like I wanted to kill you, I actually wanted to get close to you and find a way to obtain your origin of nature. In the battle with you, didn't you notice that I held back a few times? You're still too inexperienced. Think about it, even Satan from hell can't win against me. How powerful were you when you first arrived at the age of the ancient beast? How could you escape from me? The first time I led the beasts to attack you, I already noticed the origin of nature in your body. Therefore, I didn't kill you. Otherwise, even if Irual was using a fake Xianyuan sword, even if she was using the real Xianyuan sword, she wouldn't be a real threat to me when she used the ultimate Kirin's arm. In the end, I succeeded. I successfully entered your body. If you want to ask me why I'm not afraid of the effects of the domain of life and death, I can only answer you with one word. That is confidence. Chiyu felt his body turning cold. He obviously didn't expect the old cow's plan. The bull demon king was much more scheming than he had imagined. Coupled with his powerful abilities, it seemed like his intuition was right. The old cow was indeed the biggest threat. The bull demon king said plainly, although the domain of life and death can restrict me, if you commit suicide, my body will be destroyed. However, I have already understood the mysteries of the soul. My soul will survive. So what if my body is destroyed? At most, I will spend 1,000 years to possess a strong body. With 1,000 years of cultivation, I will be able to return to my original state. I'm betting that you won't be willing to die. In the end, I succeeded. The benefit of success is that I will become stronger and get closer to my goal. Even if I fail, I will just have to start all over again. Even though the life and death domain was still threatening me, my confidence told me that when I became as strong as I wanted to be, I would be able to break free from the life and death domain. Now it's not too late. Do you know that? Chi-Yu's aura was completely silent. After a long time, he opened his mouth and said, "Then why are you telling me all these now? Are you trying to prove how stupid and arrogant I am?" "No, you're wrong. I don't think you're stupid. Instead, I think you're the smartest and most talented human I've ever met. You're the most talented. Or rather, even if you include all the ancient beasts, there's no one who can compare to you." Chi-Yu sneered. "Is this considered a compliment?" Bull Demon King said indifferently, "You should be able to tell that these are my sincere words. Chi-Yu, a long time ago, I already possessed unparalleled strength. In this world, there are far too few people who are worthy of being my opponent. Back then, I did not place you in my eyes at all, so I did not even place you in my eyes. Therefore, I wasn't afraid of any unforeseen events. However, after coming into contact with you, you made me look at you in a different light. The reason why I said that you're smart and have talents that others don't is because you can always display your full strength in battle, to the greatest extent. To put it simply, when you first arrived in the world of hell, do you still remember the battle with Sanaa? Under the circumstances at that time, your strength was actually not much stronger than Sanaa. His 10-winged strength was already very powerful. However, you could make use of all kinds of situations to defeat him. In terms of the use of one's own ability, he was far inferior to you. At that time, in our battle in the frozen spring, you displayed your full strength. If I was a little weaker, I wouldn't have been able to escape from your trap. Afterwards, I simply followed your trap. I fell into your domain of shared life and death. However, I only have one word to describe you. You're a genius. You used your own ability to create all kinds of situations that were advantageous to you in order to achieve the best result. You could even display 120% of your strength. Even I dare not say that I can compare to you. In this aspect, you're definitely worthy of my admiration. So what? I'm no match for you, am I? It seems. You've already found a way to escape from the domain of shared life and death. That's why you're telling me all this. Bull Demon King said, Actually, I never thought of telling you all this. Today, I'm not telling you all this because I've found a way to break the domain of shared life and death. It's because you've made another breakthrough that I'm telling you all this. Do you know, you've already made me feel threatened? Your potential is so great that it makes me gasp in amazement. You've understood the true mysteries of the soul. This means that you can be like me, a true immortal. Under such circumstances, how can I not treat you as a true opponent? Chi-Yu, you have to continue working hard. Don't let me down. Chi-Yu frowned slightly. What do you mean? Do you want me to be stronger than you so that I can deal with you? Bull Demon King said, Of course not. I'm looking forward to you becoming stronger because I'm looking forward to the appearance of someone who can be my opponent. Only when such an opponent appears can I have more motivation to improve my own ability. The greater the pressure, the greater the motivation. You should understand this better than me. However, to be honest with you, your current strength is still not enough. Continue to work hard. I hope that one day you can become my opponent. At that time, I think I'll have the chance to make another breakthrough. Your spring of nature is indeed a good thing. In the short time I've been in your body, it's already made my strength rise again. In the near future, you and I can't tell what will happen between us. However, your soul has already been upgraded to the current realm. I believe that you won't be willing to die, right? Between us, there's no need to use other circumstances to do anything. What we need to do is to improve our strength and see who can truly suppress the other. Chi-Yu didn't utter a word. Bull Demon King's words resounded in his heart. After a long time, when he felt that the time travel was about to end, a faint smile suddenly appeared on his face. It was a smile filled with confidence. Old Bull, thank you. Bull Demon King's voice sounded after a long silence. Thank me? I think you should hate me instead. Chi-Yu shook his head and said, Why should I hate you? Actually, you haven't done anything detrimental to me. On the contrary, you've helped me many times and even saved my life. After listening to what you said, I thought a lot. I find that although what you said seems to be beneficial to you, have you ever thought that what you said, from a certain point of view, is also beneficial to me? It's only now that I've just upgraded my soul to a whole new realm that you feel threatened by me. However, have you ever thought that from the moment I accepted you as an envoy and used the life and death domain to restrict you, you've already exerted a huge pressure on me? Under this huge pressure, my motivation has always been full. Otherwise, even if I have the potential, I might not be able to improve to this level in such a short time. Old Bull was stunned for a moment and said, What you said isn't unreasonable. It's just that I didn't think that you could pose any threat to me at that time, so I didn't notice it. Chi-Yu smiled and said, The reason why I want to thank you is not only because of the pressure you've given me in the past, but also because of the timing when you spoke just now. Frankly speaking, the Wind Thundercloud Force has also been upgraded to near the peak realm, so I can't help but feel complacent. I'm the clearest about my own strength. Under such circumstances, your words can be said to be a blow to me, but at the same time, it's also a motivation for me. Don't worry, I'll work hard. One day, I'll have an evenly matched battle with you. At that time, it's still unknown who will emerge victorious. You have the confidence to break free from the life and death domain, so why don't I have the confidence to defeat you? All right. Bull Demon King shouted, You're indeed a true man. I'll wait for that day to come. Chi-Yu, I have a whole new level of respect for you for being able to say such words. Perhaps the heavens have destined us to be enemies. However, under the circumstances of being enemies, I'm willing to treat you as a friend. That's because you're the only person in this world who can make me feel this way. You've made me experience an emotion I've never felt before. I don't know if I should thank you. Thank you, friend. I'll think the same way too. Old Bull, let's see who can surpass the other in the near future. The surrounding space suddenly relaxed, and everything returned to normal. The surrounding light flickered, and abundant air flowed around Chi-Yu's body. The sound of the waves allowed Chi-Yu to see the horizon in the distance. He knew that he had returned. He had returned to the earth where he was born and raised. Old Bull once again entered a deep sleep to cultivate. Meanwhile, Chi-Yu's confidence at that moment was unprecedentedly strong. With the presence of Bull Demon King, a huge threat that could explode at any time, the feeling in his heart was very strong. He had to become stronger. This was the only thought in Chi-Yu's mind at that moment. The power of his soul was released. At that moment, Chi-Yu's spiritual power was like a satellite in outer space. He didn't need to make any more judgments. He had already found the right path and flew forward towards the mainland in the east. When Chi-Yu returned to Dragonfield Courtyard, it was already afternoon. When he flew back from the high seas, he found that after the thundercloud force had increased, his flying speed had broken through the bottleneck and increased to a terrifying level. He only used the same amount of time as when he flew to the high seas to return to Dragonfield Courtyard. With a flash of light, Chi-Yu landed in the courtyard of Dragonfield Courtyard. However, he was stunned. This was because he found that there was no aura of energy in the huge Dragonfield Courtyard. What was going on? Everyone wasn't waiting for him at home. Where did they go? Chi-Yu walked towards the villa in doubt. At that moment the door opened. Uncle Zhou, who was dressed in plain clothes, walked out. Uncle Zhou saw Chi-Yu at a glance and couldn't help but be surprised. Chi-Yu, you're back? What the hell happened? Chi-Yu looked at Uncle Zhou and asked doubtfully, Uncle Zhou, what's wrong? Where are the others? Why aren't any of them here? Did they go out to do something? Uncle Zhou smiled bitterly and said, They left yesterday. Mrs. Mood isn't right. The others are also very agitated. They didn't say anything to me. However, before they left, Miss said that they were going to Greece and didn't know when they would come back. Oh no. Chi-Yu blurted out. Of course, he knew where Yamu and the others went. He didn't come back. Yamu and the others must have thought that he was killed by Yamu. They went to Greece to seek revenge. It seemed that he couldn't rest yet. He had to make another trip to Greece. He shook his head helplessly and said, Uncle Zhou, do you know how many days I've been away this time? Uncle Zhou said, I think it's been 5 days. I don't know exactly when you left, but since 5 days ago, Miss and the others have been very anxious. Mrs. Temper has been getting better recently, but these days, she has been acting up frequently. She even had some simple conflicts with your friends. Recently, they have been discussing something. Yesterday, they suddenly booked tickets to Greece and left in a hurry. They should have arrived there by now. Chi-Yu, what's going on? Did something happen? Chi-Yu shook his head with a bitter smile. No, nothing happened. It's just that I've been away for too long and they're anxious. Alright, I'll go to Greece now. Uncle Zhou, I'll leave the family to you. While speaking, Chi-Yu floated up and rushed into the air in the blink of an eye. Anyway, Uncle Zhou already knew that they weren't ordinary people, so it wasn't a big deal to let him see him fly. For Uncle Zhou, Chi-Yu had absolute trust. When he first came to Dragonfield Courtyard, Uncle Zhou was the first person who made him feel warm. That's right. Ryue and the others went to Greece. Moreover, they went there in an extremely anxious mood. That day, after Chi-Yu and Yamu left, the Zodiac warriors waited anxiously. Of course, they knew how powerful Yamu was, but Ryue also knew that Chi-Yu's strength had been promoted to the 8 Clouds realm, and even his Thundercloud force had reached the 9 Clouds realm. From the perspective of strength, even without the Xianyuan sword, Chi-Yu wouldn't lose to Yamu. But as the saying goes, concern leads to confusion. When Chi-Yu and Yamu left for a day, everyone began to let their imaginations run wild, especially Chi-Yu's 5 confidants, who were extremely anxious. At that time, Ryue could still maintain some calmness, and persuaded everyone to wait patiently and believe in Chi-Yu's strength. The battle between the strong might not end in a short period of time. If they continued to wait, the anxiety would only spread. These days, the Zodiac warriors even gave up their cultivation and analyzed the strength of Chi-Yu and Yamu every day. But no matter how they analyzed, they couldn't conclude that Chi-Yu would lose. On the 3rd day, Snow Girl suddenly said something that awakened the Zodiac warriors. Obviously, Snow Girl hated Yamu the most among them. She told everyone that perhaps Yamu wasn't a match for Chi-Yu in terms of strength, but they shouldn't forget how Yamu deceived Chi-Yu. Yamu could come from the west to the east alone to challenge Chi-Yu, so obviously she didn't come to die. She naturally knew the extent of Chi-Yu's strength, and the Zodiac warriors were here. So, there was only one explanation. Yamu must have some plot to make Chi-Yu lose the duel. After hearing Snow Girl's words, the anxiety became even stronger. Even Ryue couldn't help it. When everyone was arguing about what to do, the emergence of different opinions caused many arguments. In the end, they made up their minds to go to Greece. At that time, everyone had already prepared for the worst. Chi-Yu didn't come back for 3 days, so it was impossible for the battle to continue. Something must have happened. Either Chi-Yu was seriously injured, or there was an accident, or even Chi-Yu was dead. After all, with the source of nature's energy, if it was just an injury, Chi-Yu should have returned. After an urgent discussion, Ryue made up her mind. She stood her ground and issued a summon order to all the members of the 12 Zodiac teams in the shortest time possible. Ryue was very clear that if only the Zodiac warriors went to Greece, even if they were stronger than the guardians of the 12 Zodiac constellations, there was still Yamu. However, the other side still had Yumao. Although the Zodiac guardian warriors already had their own earthly tokens, it would still be difficult for them to win against Yumao's Athena artifact. Therefore, she decided to recall the 12 Zodiac squads and go to Greece with the strongest formation of the Zodiac army. First, they were to find Chi-Yu. If only Yamu went back, it would mean that Chi-Yu was really killed. They finally reached a consensus. On the 4th day after Chi-Yu left, the members of the 12 Zodiac teams rode on their golden-winged eagles as fast as they could. They rushed to Beijing to meet up and booked plane tickets. That night they flew to Greece. If they had waited another day, they would not have been separated from Chi-Yu. However, sometimes a day's time was enough to decide many things. Greece, Athens Airport. Ryue and the others had chartered a private plane to come here. After all, there were more than 100 of them, which was more than enough. Ryu, who was wearing a black uniform, walked in the front. At this time, her mood was extremely heavy, so much so that her face became very ugly. She was like an active volcano that could erupt at any time. Under such circumstances, even the Zodiac guardian god warriors would not be able to survive. No one dared to say anything else. After all, Ryue was the strongest among the Zodiac guardian warriors, and she was also the first Zodiac guardian warrior, so everyone respected her strength. Disagreements before departure. The main problem was whether they should wait a few more days. The rational Guan Ping and the others hoped to wait a few more days, while the women led by Ryue, Ming Ming, and Vol and the others could not wait to go to Greece. The other 11 Zodiac guardian warriors were beside Ryue. They were all dressed in the same black uniform, which was full of a cold feeling. Even Snow Girl, who was always dressed in white, was dressed in black this time. And the 120 members of the Zodiac team were all wearing black suits and sunglasses. At this time, more than 100 of them did not look like the Guardians of the East. Instead, they looked like gangsters. Their murderous aura formed a vacuum in the chaotic and noisy Athens airport. With the Zodiac army as the center, within a radius of hundreds of meters, no one dared to approach them. Even if the 5 women walking in the front were all stunning beauties, no lecher would dare to come up and make trouble. More than 100 Asians appeared at the Athens airport at the same time. Moreover, they were dressed like this, which must have attracted the attention of the Athens authorities. The Athens police got the news immediately. But since they came to Athens through normal channels, they had no reason to do anything. But the number of spies hiding in the dark had increased sharply, and Ryue and her team had become the focus of the Athens police. Walking out of the airport, Ryue stopped. She had been praying in her heart for the past few days. Regarding this matter, she did not blame Chi-yu at all. After all, as a man, taking revenge for his beloved woman and friends was something he had to do. Chi-yu's dignity did not allow others to intervene. But the result was unbearable. If Chi-yu was really hurt, Ryue would definitely avenge her man, even if she had to die here. Ming, you have been here before, so you can lead the way. Let's go and find Yama directly. Ryue's voice seemed to be able to freeze the air. Ming nodded. She was also in a terrible mood. Compared to Ryue, she felt a little more remorseful. She had not confirmed Chi-yu's death yet, so she was still suppressing the sadness in her heart. But now she was extremely regretful. She regretted not taking advantage of the opportunity to give her body to Chi-yu. If Chi-yu had really died, at least she would not have any regrets. But it was too late to say anything now. She did not even want to find Yamu now. If Yamu had really returned, it would mean that Chi-yu had already. That would be a fact that no one in the Zodiac army, including her, could accept. Let's go to Parthenon. Ming took a deep breath and forced herself to calm down. Then, she led the group from the airport to the taxi station. After giving some simple instructions to the group, she, Ryue, and Snow Girl got into the first taxi. The taxis in Athens were very professional. At least they did not refuse to take passengers. There were more than 130 people in total. Close to 50 taxis got into the famous Parthenon in a grandiose manner. Everyone in the Zodiac army was in a very heavy mood. Not only was Chi-yu their king, but he was also their spiritual leader. To the Zodiac army, the presence of Chi-yu and the absence of Chi-yu were absolutely two different concepts. Chi-yu's strength, Chi-yu's imposing manner, and everything he had done for the Zodiac army had long been deeply imprinted in their hearts. Sitting in the taxi, Ryue seemed to have thought of something. She took out her phone and dialed Hu Guang's number. Ryue, what's the matter? Hu Guang's voice was serious for once. Ryue said calmly, Hu Guang, does the Sacred Flame sect still have any more VX gas missiles? Hu Guang was shocked. Ryue, why are you asking this? You can't be thinking of. Ryue said, you don't have to ask me what I'm thinking of. If there are any more, I'll buy them all. You can name the price. Instruct your men to transport the VX gas missiles to Athens at the fastest speed, no matter what method they use. I want to use them. After saying this, she hung up the phone. Snow Girl and Ming's gazes focused on Ryue. Looking at their questioning gazes, Ryue closed her eyes as if she was resting. She only said one sentence calmly. It was a sentence that seemed very ordinary, but it was like a stormy sea. If Chi-yu was really harmed by Yamu, then I want the whole of Greece to die with him. Fortunately, the driver in Greece did not speak the Yenhuang language. Otherwise, who knew if he would have driven the taxi to the Aegean Sea? Ming and Snow Girl looked at each other. Surprisingly, they did not object. At this moment, the two girls could deeply feel how deep Ryue's love for Chi-yu was. It was so deep that it had reached a terrifying level. Sister Ryue, no matter what, I'll always support you. You'll always be our big sister, Ming said softly. Snow Girl only nodded and did not say anything. A faint red light flashed in her eyes. It was a ferocious light that was filled with sorrow. Who would have thought that the three girls in this ordinary taxi would be discussing how to destroy a country? In another taxi, Hu Guang looked at the phone that had been hung up and mumbled to himself, Crazy? Is Ryue crazy? Ian, who was at the side, asked in confusion, "What's wrong? Did something happen to Ryue?" Chapter 3:15. There were 3 people in the car. Other than Hu Guang and Ian, there was also Guan Ping, who was the calmest among the Zodiac Guardian warriors. "Then why haven't you called?" This was what Guan Ping said. Hu Guang was stunned. He looked at Guan Ping and said, "You don't object?" Guan Ping sat in the front passenger seat and said without turning his head, "Why should I object? What does the life of a Westerner have to do with me? If Chi Yu really dies, I'm afraid that Greece won't be the only one to be blamed. I can understand Ryue's feelings, but don't you have the same thoughts? Without Chi Yu, how can we be called the Zodiac Guardian Warriors? Without Chi Yu, would we be where we are today?" Hu Guang pondered and said, "But do you know how many civilians there are in Greece?" Guan Ping laughed and said, "I never realized that you are actually kinder than me. If Chi Yu dies, it will be the end of the world for us. Actually, I'm not surprised that Ryue wants the VX gas missile. I even want to destroy the entire Earth. Don't forget that the reason why the Earth was able to avoid the asteroid crisis was all thanks to Chi Yu. If it wasn't for him, the Earth would have been finished. If he dies, even if the whole Earth is buried with him, I think it's worth it. When I was in the Dragonfield courtyard, I wanted to wait a few more days. I was just afraid that Chi Yu would come back and not see us." Hu Guang was stunned for a moment. Then, a faint murderous aura spread out from his body. "Yes, it seems that I thought too much. Okay, I'll make the call now. Let's not tell anyone about this. I think no one will object. No one will object to it. If something really happens in the future, we'll be the ones to bear the consequences." Guan Ping smiled and said, "Actually, we don't need to bear any burdens at all. Chi Yu's contribution to the country could not be described in any way. If those generals knew that Chi Yu was killed by the Greeks, what do you think would happen? We're just helping them do what they want to do and greatly reducing the country's consumption. We're even heroes." Although he was smiling, he didn't know what to say. His face was so cold that the driver beside him didn't even dare to look at him. Parthenon wasn't too far from the Athens airport. By the time everyone arrived, it was already noon. However, none of the members of the Zodiac army were in the mood for lunch. After getting out of the taxi, they headed straight for Parthenon. With a heavy heart, everyone walked towards Parthenon. However, they did not go too far. He was stopped. At least 300 policemen suddenly appeared in front of the Zodiac army. They were all armed policemen with live ammunition. The black muzzles of the guns were aimed at every member of the Zodiac army. A policeman of unknown rank shouted loudly in English through a megaphone, "All the Easterners in front, stop and accept the inspection." Ryue stood in front and was the first to stop. However, she slowly clenched her right fist. Yen Xiaoi was a little surprised and said to the vole next to him, "I didn't expect the Greek police to react so quickly. They actually blocked in front of us." Vole snorted. "If they don't come, then they're fools. Don't you think our attire is too eye-catching? Coming here without any disguise, it was certain that they would be intercepted. But so what? Prepare for battle." His expression was ugly. He was no less worried about Chi Yu than Ryue. Guan Ping stood there. He muttered to himself, 300 armed policemen and more than 20 snipers. They were all equipped with the most advanced weapons. What a powerful lineup! It seems that they attach great importance to us. Seeing that the Zodiac army had stopped, the policemen quickly surrounded them. Their movements were extremely fast. Soon, more than 100 Zodiac soldiers were surrounded in the center. The muzzles were all aimed at them, and they could open fire at any time. The policeman who had shouted before quickly came to Ryue. He could naturally see that Ryue was the leader of the group. "Please show me your IDs for inspection." Ryue said calmly, "What? Is this how Greece treats foreign tourists? I've never heard of a time when Greece treated tourists with weapons. I refuse your inspection." The policeman was stunned. Indeed, treating foreign tourists in this way would have a great negative effect on Greece's reputation. However, the people of the Zodiac army were too eye-catching. Every one of them looked murderous. Only experienced soldiers would have the smell of blood, but it was much stronger on every member of the Zodiac army. After receiving the news that the taxi was going to Parthenon, the Greek police responded immediately. The 300 people here were only a part of them. There were also 300 elite policemen guarding the area above Parthenon. They were afraid that these Asians would harm Parthenon. After all, this was the symbol of Athens. It was the palace of the goddess Athena. I'm sorry, dear Miss Dongfang. We have received reliable information that a group of terrorists has sneaked into our city. For the safety of our city, and to prevent the terrorists from succeeding, please cooperate with us. I'm very sorry for the inconvenience. Although he said so, the gun in his hand was still pointed at the people in front of him. In front of Ryu, he felt an immense pressure. The dragons might even caused his body to tremble, and fine beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. The Athenian policeman suddenly realized that although he had many men armed with guns, and he was also pointing his gun at the stunning oriental beauty in front of him, it did not bring him any sense of security. Ryue only looked at him indifferently, but it made him want to kneel down. "Mississippi Miss, please show me your ID," the policeman emphasized again. He mustered up the courage to say this, but the nervousness in his heart had already reached its peak. Ryue slowly raised her right hand, and the surrounding policemen subconsciously pointed their guns at her delicate body. "Sister Ryue." Ming Ming shook her head at Ryue and said through telepathy, "Before we see Yemu, we'd better not act rashly. After all, if we go against the Greek authorities, it will affect our original plan." Ryue's frosty face relaxed a little. She raised her hand and took out her passport from her bosom and handed it to the policeman. Looking at the passport in front of him, the policeman was stunned at first, but then he realized that the other party was not going to do anything. He suddenly relaxed a lot, and the pressure in front of him disappeared. He took the passport and looked at the content. Looking at Ryue in front of him, he could not help but scold himself in his heart. What was there to be afraid of? Wasn't she just an Asian woman? In front of so many advanced weapons, was she afraid that these Asians would dare to do anything? His heart relaxed, and his tone changed a lot. "Yes, that's right. Cooperation is the best way out for you. The others, take out your passports and accept the inspection." Seeing that Ryue had already handed over her passport, the Zodiac soldiers no longer insisted and took out their passports one by one and handed them to the police. The police did not interrogate them for too long. There was no problem with the passports. At least for now, Ryue and the Zodiac army were absolutely law-abiding. The passports were returned to everyone's hands. Ryue put away her passport and said lightly, "Can we go now?" The policeman said subconsciously, "No." Ryue's tone suddenly became cold. "Why?" "Well, because we have to ensure the safety of Athens, so we need to search all of you. All of your luggage and bodies must be searched." The policeman looked at Ryue with a fierce look. After all, they had just cooperated, hadn't they? Ryue suddenly smiled, and the policeman in front of her suddenly felt an indescribable strong temptation filling his whole body. Ryue said, "Are you the one to search me?" The policeman seemed to be fascinated, or maybe it was because the attraction to Ryue was too strong. He actually said subconsciously, "Yes, it's me." In fact, this might not have been his original intention, but because of the urgency of the matter, all the policemen who participated in this operation were male. It would obviously take time for him to find a female policeman to search them. In the face of such a stunning beauty, who wouldn't want to take advantage of her? The feeling of the Zodiac warriors was completely different from that of the policemen. They had all seen Ryue's smile before. Such a gentle smile often appeared in the past, but at that time, Ryue's smile only belonged to one person, and that was their king of the Zodiac. The gentle smile appeared once again. Every one of the Zodiac warriors could clearly feel a cold aura emanating from Ryu's body. They understood that the Tyrannosaurus Rex was about to explode, and it was going to be a thunderous explosion. The policeman took a step forward, holding a gun in one hand, and the other hand actually touched Ryu's towering chest, as if there was a magnet attracting him. Ryu did not move, but her eyes were filled with murderous intent. Other than Chiyu, no man had ever touched her body, not in the past and not in the future. Screams were heard almost in an instant. Those policemen didn't even have time to react. The police officer in front of Ryu had already disappeared. Yes, he disappeared, and not even a trace was left. His gun had already turned into a piece of iron powder in front of Ryu, and his body had also turned into powder in front of Ryu's T-Rex power, scattering with the wind. Ryu was still standing there as if she had never moved. Who else wants to search me? At this time, the policemen finally reacted, and their hands immediately pulled the triggers in their hands. However, when they pulled the trigger, they found that the guns in their hands were already half gone. Not to mention launching an attack, even if they were to use it as a fire stick, it would not be long enough. And in front of them floated a colorful feather. The feather seemed to be transparent, but at the same time, it was so real. None of the policemen dared to move, because their bodies had been completely locked, and huge vines that came out of nowhere had already wrapped around their neck. Not only were the 300 policemen instantly disarmed, but at the same time, their bodies could also be torn apart at any time. They were puzzled in their hearts. Why didn't the snipers shoot at this time? Someone solved this problem for them. The ice sculptures were pulled over by an invisible force, and the number was exactly the same as the snipers. These ice sculptures even maintained their sniping positions, and it seemed that the effect was not bad. In front of the Zodiac Guardian warrior, these armed policemen were no different from straws. In the face of a powerful special ability, what could they do? A faint light flickered, and Ryu's eyes radiated power. She didn't even look at the policeman in front of her, nor did she continue to walk up. She raised her head to the sky and let out a resonant roar. The roar soared into the sky, and a huge energy fluctuation caused the dark clouds above the city of Athens to instantly disperse. The huge dragon cloud force produced an incomparably powerful aura, and the huge pressure caused the surrounding Greek policemen to pee their pants at the same time. Yamu, come out. If you don't want the people of Athens to be plunged into misery and suffering, then come out and see me. A faint light shone from Ryu's body. The white light was supposed to be gentle, but when it appeared on her body, it became so domineering. A strong energy fluctuation soared into the sky, and a huge pressure directly shrouded Parthenon, who was at the top of the mountain. The invisible energy erupted from Parthenon in an instant, and in an instant, it broke through the huge pressure brought by Ryu. 12 figures appeared at the top of the mountain almost at the same time, leaping like stars, and headed in the direction of Ryu and the others. In the blink of an eye, the 12 figures had already arrived at the foot of the mountain. Seeing the situation in front of them, Mephistopheles, the leader of the constellation Guardian, could not help but be shocked. Just now, I thought that my senses were wrong. I didn't expect that my friends from the east had actually come here. What's going on? Who can tell me? Ryu's gaze swept across the constellation Guardian in front of her, and she could not see Yamu. She could not help but secretly sigh in relief. As long as Yamu did not appear, it meant that Chiyu might still be alive. It's nothing. It's just that there was a policeman who wanted to do a body search on me just now, so I sent him to the realm of gods that you believe in, Ryu said lightly. Mephistopheles was stunned for a moment, and then anger suddenly appeared on his face. Miss Ryu, what do you mean by this? This is not your Eastern Yenwang Republic. You came to Greece, and you have to abide by the laws of Greece. How dare you kill people here? Law? What use is the law to me? Don't you think that this is ridiculous? Mr. Mephistopheles. If a man put his hand on your wife's chest, what would you do? Would you obey the law, or wait for him to grab the person he wants to grab before letting the police arrest him? Mephistopheles could not help but be speechless. Indeed, for a strong person like Ryue to be humiliated like this, it was impossible for her to wait for the law. At this time, he had already calmed down. His gaze swept across the Zodiac warriors in front of him, and he could not help but be secretly surprised. Such a huge lineup in front of him actually gathered all the power of the Zodiac army. Except for the Zodiac King who did not appear, it could be said that the entire power of the Eastern Guardian was gathered here. Looking at the clothes of the Zodiac warriors, he also understood why the police stopped them. Even if he was a police officer and saw so many people dressed like gangsters, he was afraid that he would not hesitate to do the same thing. As for the policeman who died in the hands of Ryue just now, he knew that the guy could only die in vain. It was his own fault for insulting someone who should not have been insulted at all. Mephistopheles' tone softened a lot and he said, "Miss Ryue, if our country's police did something bad just now, I apologize to you on their behalf. I apologize to you on their behalf, but can you let go of the other policemen first?" Ryue said lightly, "If you can guarantee that they will not bother us like flies, I can let them go." Mephistopheles hurriedly said, "Of course, this is a matter between us guardians, of course we will solve it ourselves." He naturally knew how many policemen were guarding here. However, even if there were 10 times or 100 times more policemen, how could they fight against these Eastern Guardians? Ryue waved her hand, and the plant soul quietly retracted the released plant energy. The policemen regained their freedom, but their faces were already pale with fear. Coupled with the wet feeling in their pants, under Mephistopheles' instructions, they hurriedly left, not even daring to look at Ryue. The super beauty just now had now become a super witch in their eyes. The ice on the 20 ice sculptures also disappeared. Because the time of the freezing was not long, these people did not really suffer any real damage, and they hurriedly retreated together. The 12 Zodiac Guardians lined up in a row, their faces showing a dignified expression. Obviously, they did not expect the Zodiac army to appear in such a lineup, and it was impossible for them to be prepared. They all knew very well that even if they faced the Zodiac Guardian one-on-one, they did not have absolute confidence in winning, let alone the 120 members of the Zodiac squad. Nimbus walked to Mephistopheles' side and stood still. She frowned and said, "Miss Ryue, what exactly happened? From the looks of it, you don't seem to have come to Parthenon as guests." Looking at Nimbus' face that was exactly the same as Yamu's, Ryue's face turned even colder. "That's what I'm asking you. Let me ask you, where's Yamu? Tell her to come out and see me." The hot-tempered Leo Zodiac Guardian, Ilyas, flew into a rage. "Is Mrs. name for you to call?" Yamu said coldly, "Loser, you don't have the right to speak to me. Fram." As she said that, she raised her right hand and directly slapped in Ilyas's direction. Ilyas did not want to be outdone and raised his right fist, but before he could fully swing it, an incomparably huge wave of energy suddenly hit him in the face. Before he could even react, his tall and big body had already been flung away by that incomparably powerful energy and heavily smashed into the hill behind him, releasing a loud bang. All the Zodiac Guardians were moved. The last time Ilyas fought with Ryue, although he was at a disadvantage, but it was definitely not as direct as today. Ryue had just waved her hand. Even if she had used most of her energy, but to be able to send the powerful Ilyas flying in one strike, such power had already surpassed any of the Zodiac Guardians present. With their dignity damaged, all the Zodiac Guardians pounced towards Ryue at the same time, and the Zodiac Guardian warriors naturally did not want to be outdone. The huge pressure from both sides instantly rose, and without any suspense, the Zodiac Guardians were immediately suppressed. Mephistopheles raised his arms, and stopped the Zodiac Guardians from rushing forward, and said in a low voice, Miss Ryue, did you come here today to humiliate us? If that's the case, even if all of us Zodiac Guardians die here today, we will definitely fight to the death with you. Why have you gathered so many people here today? Ryue said coldly. I just said, call Yamu out to see me. It has nothing to do with you, I only want to find her. Yuyun said, my sister isn't here, I still have to ask you. Before Yamu left, she said that she wanted to go to the east. Could it be that she wasn't going to find Chiyu? Hearing Yuyun's words, the Zodiac Guardian warriors all had a look of joy on their faces. Yuyun did not look like she was lying, her spiritual power did not fluctuate at all. If Yamu was really not here, then it meant that something special had happened in her battle with Chiyu, and Chiyu might not be dead. Hearing Yuyun's words, even Ryue's face relaxed a lot. Is Yamu really not here? Mephistopheles said. The Zodiac Guardians will never lie in front of Parthenon. Miss Ryue, what exactly happened? Can we calm down and talk about it? Ryue thought for a while and said, there's nothing to talk about, I just want to know where Yamu is in the past 5 days, has she contacted you? Mephistopheles shook his head. No. Ever since Miss left a week ago, there hasn't been any news from her. Miss Ryue, did something happen on your side? I think there must be some misunderstanding between us. Misunderstanding? Ryu sneered. If it's a misunderstanding, then why did Yamu challenge Chiyu in the Yenwang Republic? Could this also be a misunderstanding? 5 days ago, she came to our place and challenged Chiyu. Chiyu hasn't returned since then. Tell me, what kind of misunderstanding is this? Hearing Ryue's words, the Constellation Guardians' faces changed. Yamu did not tell them what she was going to do before she left. Now that they heard that Yamu was going to challenge Chiyu, how could they not be shocked? They were very clear of Chiyu's strength. Furthermore, the Yenwang Republic was the headquarters of the Eastern Guardian. Yamu had gone there rashly. What would be the outcome? Ilyas had already climbed up. Although he was not injured, his chest felt stuffy from Ryue's dragon power. He said angrily, I think you guys are the ones who are complaining first. It must be you guys who harmed Miss, and then you want to destroy us Constellation Guardians. Ryue said in disdain. I've said it before, you don't have the right to talk to me. Even if we want to destroy all of you, we will do it in an open and above-board manner. Furthermore, with the current situation, do you think we have the time to take revenge on you? You. Ilyas's energy surged. He was about to pounce on Ryue. Enough. Mephistopheles stopped Ilyas from pouncing forward and said, Miss Ryue, since Miss Yamu and Chiyu did not return, then, should we sit down and have a good talk? Miss went to look for Chiyu. She definitely has no ill intentions. You also know that hell can come to the human world at any time. For this common enemy, our best choice is to cooperate. Why would we be enemies with you? Furthermore, Miss's feelings for Chiyu. Don't mention this. Otherwise, don't blame me for falling out. If it was not because Chiyu trusted her too much, so many things would not have happened. Ryue's face had become very ugly. Every time she thought of the blood and tears that Chiyu shed in her arms, her heart would hurt so much that she could not breathe. That kind of heartache was something she could never forget for the rest of her life. Mephistopheles was stunned for a moment. He made an inviting gesture and said, Please come to our Parthenon to rest. Whether you are willing to cooperate with us or not. At least for now, we are not enemies. Ryue's heart was also a little hesitant. Yamu also did not return. What happened between Chiyu and her? If Chiyu was fine, then her trip to Greece was too impulsive. Now that the situation was like this, how should they solve it? With their strength, it was not a problem to get rid of these constellation protectors, but that was not the solution to the problem. At this time, the phone in Ryue's pocket suddenly rang. That familiar voice was specially designed for him. Her pretty face immediately revealed a trace of unconcealable ecstasy. Ryue almost trembled as she took out the phone. It's him, it's that number. Hello, Chiyu, is that you? Ryue asked anxiously. Ryue, are you in Greece now? Don't do anything stupid. If you have already started, stop immediately. Chiyu hurriedly said as soon as he heard Ryue's voice. Naturally, he was not afraid of any harm to the constellation guardians, but in this sensitive period, he had promised Apollo that he would not harm the Greek constellation guardians before the matter between Hell and the underworld was resolved. Naturally, he did not want any conflict between the two sides. Moreover, the constellation guardians in Greece were after all the strongest in the world. Even if the Zodiac guardian warriors could destroy them, it would not be a complete victory. He did not want his companions to be hurt. Therefore, after receiving the news from Uncle Joe, he quickly flew in the direction of Greece while taking out his phone to call Ryue's number. Just in time to solve the embarrassment in front of Ryue. Chiyu, where are you now? Don't worry, we haven't done anything yet. Are you okay? Listening to Ryue's concerned voice, Chiyu's heart was filled with warmth. I'm fine, don't worry. I just returned to the courtyard, and Uncle Joe said that you went to Greece. I'm sorry, I made you worry. But I can't do anything about the delay this time. I'll tell you in detail when we meet. Alright, wait for me in Athens, I'll come over immediately. Where are you? Ryue said. We are at the foot of Parthenon, are you coming over now? Chiyu said, and I'll be there soon. With my speed, I'll be there in at most an hour and a half. Wait for me here, don't clash with the constellation guardians, wait for me to come over. After hanging up the phone, Ryue's face suddenly changed. She smiled again, but this time, there was no coldness in her smile. I'm really sorry, Mr. Mephisto, it seems that we really misunderstood. Chiyu is already back. This time, it was Mephisto's turn to be nervous. Miero couldn't wait to ask, since Chiyu is back, what about our miss? Where is our miss? Is she with Chiyu? Ryue shook her head and said, I don't know about this. If you want to know, wait for Chiyu to come. He'll be here in about an hour and a half. When the Zodiac Guardian warriors heard that Ryue confirmed that Chiyu was fine, they cheered almost at the same time. Those who wore sunglasses on their faces threw their sunglasses up high at the same time. Their excitement was beyond words. Especially a few of Chiyu's confidants, they couldn't help but cry tears of joy. Each and every one of them jumped up and down in excitement. They didn't look like Eastern powerhouses anymore, but a group of students who suddenly got the news that they didn't have to attend a parent-teacher conference. Wait, now that Mephisto knew, he could only choose to wait. Only Chiyu would know about Yamu's news. On one side there was joy, on the other side there was depression. The situation of ice and fire appeared at the foot of Parthenon. Mephisto even forgot to invite Ryue and the others to the divine temple. An hour and a half passed quickly. Of course, for both sides, this hour and a half became especially long. When the black figure quietly landed in front of both sides, Ryue almost immediately rushed up. Even in front of everyone, she didn't intend to hide her inner feelings. Chapter 3:16. As he spoke, Chiyu saw that the Zodiac army looked like gangsters. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said helplessly, It seems that you are here to avenge me. You guys don't have any confidence in boss. Am I that weak? It's not easy to kill me. Even if it's in other planes, it's not very possible. The Zodiac warriors surrounded Chiyu excitedly. For a moment, all kinds of questions appeared in Chiyu's ears at the same time. It made him dizzy. It took him a long time to get rid of everyone's excitement. Mr. Chi. Mephistopheles' anxious voice sounded beside Chiyu. Chiyu took Ryue's hand and turned around. I know what you want to ask. Don't worry, your miss is fine. Although I wanted to kill her, I didn't succeed this time. She is now in the God realm. She is receiving a stronger inheritance from your King Zeus. As for when she will return, I don't know. If my companions caused you any inconvenience today, I apologize on their behalf. Of course, this doesn't mean that I have a good impression of you Greek guardians. Hearing that Yama was fine, the Zodiac Guardians relaxed a lot. However, when they heard Chiyu say that Yamu went to the God Realm, they couldn't help but become nervous again. There were many explanations for going to the God Realm. Immediately, Chiyu told them about how he was lured to the God Realm by Yamu. He didn't even hide the matter of the Divine Wind Valley because there was no need to hide it. Anyway, when Yamu came back, they would know. So he said it all in one breath. It saved him the trouble of explaining to his companions when he went back. Hu Guang smiled and came to Chiyu's side. Boss, fortunately you came back in time. However, you still have to pay. Chiyu was stunned. Money? What money? I don't remember owing you money. Hu Guang grinned and said, Who said I don't owe them? Ryue just ordered all the VX gas missiles we have. It won't take long for them to be delivered here. Ryue had said that she could name the price. It doesn't need to be too expensive. About 100 million for one. In any case, you have plenty of money now. You won't care about such a small amount. Chiyu stared dumbfounded at Ryue, who was beside him. Ryue's pretty face instantly revealed a trace of shyness. It's your fault for not coming back for so long. I thought you had been killed by Yamu. Mephisto shuddered as he listened. Of course, he knew what the VX gas missile was. It was a super attack weapon that was no less powerful than a nuclear bomb. And it was so harmful that it was even more dangerous than a nuclear bomb to a certain extent. Perhaps in the face of a nuclear bomb, he still had the confidence to protect himself, but in the face of a neurotic VX gas missile, it was difficult to guarantee. Lunatics, these guys from the East were definitely lunatic. How could he have encouraged Miss to go against them and harm Chiyu? If they were lunatics, then he would be a fool. Then, Ian's next words confirmed his point of view. Ian said, That's right, boss. You have to pay this money. Ryue said, If you die in the hands of Yamu, let a certain country be buried with you. Chiyu's eyes revealed a trace of slyness. Okay, 100 million, right? I'll pay, I'll give you 100 million sun dollars. Hearing Chiyu mention sun dollars, everyone showed a strange look. Chiyu saw that everyone's expressions were a little off, and couldn't help but ask doubtfully, What's wrong? Although sun dollars aren't very valuable, there's still money. Ryue said in a low voice, Chiyu. Not long ago there was the largest tsunami in the world's history, and that island country was completely engulfed by the tsunami. The losses were incalculable, and the number of people who survived did not exceed 1%. That country. It can be said that it has been wiped out from the world map. Chiyu was stunned. Then, he immediately thought of something and asked tentatively, Is the direction of the tsunami coming from the high seas? Ryue looked at him in surprise and said, Since you know, why are you asking us? Could it be? At this point, Ryue subconsciously covered her mouth, and the way the surrounding Zodiac Guardian warriors looked at Chiyu also changed drastically. Hu Guang stuttered, B-boss, you can't be serious, right? Could it be that you did that? A trace of a smile appeared in Chiyu's eyes. No, it wasn't me. At least it wasn't me alone. If it was really because of us, then at least half of the responsibility of Yamu. Under the collision of our energy, it was possible to produce that kind of power, but I didn't expect the effect to be so good. Not bad, it saves me a lot of trouble. That despicable race should have been destroyed long ago. Mephisto felt another chill run down his spine. What kind of people were these? Could it be that they were the legendary god of plagues? The destruction of a country was actually said so easily by him. If they really offended them, Greece would probably. At this time, he didn't even dare to doubt what Chiyu had just said. These Easterners in front of him were too scary, too scary. Mephisto secretly swore in his heart that no matter what, he would never offend the Easterners again. He swore to the heavens. The farce ended with Chiyu's return. He naturally could not let this trip to Greece be in vain. For his sake, everyone had worked so hard to come to Greece. Chi-Yu decided to celebrate the destruction of the Sun Nation and thank everyone for their concern for him by touring the Aegean Sea. Perhaps it was because he was too excited, or because Yum wasn't around. Chi-Yu also sent an application to Mephisto and the others. However, Mephisto didn't think it was a good idea. He really didn't want to have anything to do with these extremely dangerous people, who were even more dangerous than the legendary King of Terror, Ladin. He happily lent the most valuable ship under Yumu's name to Chi-Yu and the others, then led the Zodiac Guardians back to Parthenon as fast as possible. The Aegean Sea was as beautiful as ever. The beautiful feeling made the warriors of the Zodiac army standing on the deck of the ship feel dazzled. The beauty here was a completely different concept from the beauty of the ancient beasts, especially when they heard the legend of the Aegean Sea from Chi-Yu's mouth. Standing at the front of the ship, Chi-Yu looked at the vast sea in front of him. Looking at the vast sea in front of him, Yumao's figure once again appeared in his mind. Once upon a time, he had spent a wonderful month here with Yumu. However, it was also because of that month that he and Yumu developed feelings that shouldn't have appeared between them, which led to so many things happening later on. There was no medicine for regret in this world. However, after this trip to the divine realm, and after listening to Apollo's explanation, Chi-Yu's hatred for Yumu seemed to have lessened a little. He even felt a little lost. He didn't know who he should take revenge on for Wenting's death. In the end, he had to move forward bit by bit. He also had to bear a huge responsibility. Yumu's deception and her sad tears formed a special contradiction in Chi-Yu's heart. Chi-Yu, are you thinking of her again? Ryua had appeared alone beside Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu didn't hide it and nodded subconsciously. Ryua sighed softly and said, "If what Apollo said is true, then Yumu hasn't really controlled her own body. However, the matter between her and us is already very difficult to resolve." Chi-Yu. You? Chi-Yu pulled Ryua into his arms and said softly, "I know what you're worried about. You're worrying too much. I'm already the happiest man in the world to have all of you by my side. As for Yumu's problem, let's wait until the matter between Hell and the Underworld is completely resolved. Between me and her, there will definitely be an end. Everything that happened in the past has happened after all. It has also produced irreparable effects. Everything can wait until the crisis brought about by the 9-star alignment is over." Ryua smiled and said, "It's good that you can think that way." The sea breeze caused her alluring long hair to flutter behind her. Her graceful figure melded into Chi-Yu's embrace. The Tyrannosaurus Rex, which had previously been so powerful that it wanted to destroy Greece, now seemed to be afraid of the cold. It was exceptionally lovable. "When we go back, I'm afraid we won't be able to live a peaceful life again," Chi-Yu said with some disappointment. Ryua nodded and said, "I know. Who let us have this ability? Since the heavens have given us such power, there are some things that we must solve by ourselves." "Chi-Yu, are you confident?" Chi-Yu said, "I don't know. Although my strength has been further improved. But no one knows how powerful the alliance between Hell and the Underworld can be. Everything can only wait until it happens. After we go back this time, I will lead everyone to further strengthen their training. Although it is difficult for me to improve my ability, you can still do it. Especially the cooperation between you and your messengers, you need to further hone it. Even Apollo, the sun god, didn't know when the alignment of the 9 stars would occur, but it wouldn't be long now. We don't have time to make other preparations. We can only make our own strength stronger. When the enemy really comes, we will let them know how powerful we are. Whether it's Satan or Hades, I want to show them just how powerful humans can be." The stay in the Aegean Sea lasted for 2 days. Everyone felt that they hadn't had enough fun, but they had to go back. For them, it was not the time to indulge. Perhaps some people would be afraid of flying, just like Chi-Yu who had suffered from airsickness in the past. However, to the Zodiac warriors, flying was the simplest and most comfortable thing to do. It was fast, and there was no danger at all. What a joke! With more than 100 golden-winged eagles, even if the engine of the plane stopped, they could still fly back easily. Tibet, St. Buddha Temple. Zagreus sat cross-legged in the main hall. At this time, he was the only one in the hall. The dim candlelight shone on the statue of Buddha, and the whole hall seemed a little lonely. Slowly opening his eyes that seemed to be able to see through everything in the world, Zagreus sighed, "What should come will come. Chi-Yu, I can't help you anymore. I hope you can withstand the 3 crises that will come one after another. Or rather, it will be a 3-in-1 crisis. This will determine the fate of the entire Earth. Perhaps you're not the savior, but you're the key to everything. Buddha bless me. I believe that you will succeed." Chi-Yu couldn't hear Zagreus' voice. At this time, they had already returned to the Dragon Field courtyard. Everything in the Dragon Field courtyard was the same as before. When they left, Ryue and the others were still extremely anxious, but when they returned, they were all indescribably happy. The trip to Greece had become a vacation for them. As for the dead police officer, Mephisto would naturally take care of him easily. They didn't need to worry about anything. Undercurrents were constantly appearing. All kinds of situations were showing what the Earth was about to face. After a night of rest, when the next morning came, Chi-Yu called all the members of the Zodiac army to the huge courtyard of the Dragon Field courtyard. "Friends, the holiday is over," Chi-Yu said calmly. The warriors of the Zodiac squad stood behind their respective captains, while Snow Girl, Shang Bing, and the Plant Soul stood beside Chi-Yu. After hearing Chi-Yu's words, the smiles on everyone's faces gradually disappeared. They knew that Chi-Yu had something to say to them. Sweeping his gaze across everyone, Chi-Yu was very satisfied with the current mental state of his comrades. This was a mighty army with iron will. Although they only had a little more than 100 people, Chi-Yu had never thought that his Zodiac army would be inferior to Satan's Burning Legion. Since the asteroid incident, everyone has been relaxing for a while. I know that no one wants to take risks, and everyone wants to be with their families. However, in the near future, I'm afraid that we will face enemies that outnumber us by 100 or even 1,000 times. We are giving up some time to cultivate now so that we can spend more time with our families in the future. I won't say much to motivate you. Everyone has been fighting and cultivating together for a long time. Starting from today, starting from now, a new round of training was about to begin. This time, all of you will be facing a different kind of cultivation method. I believe that all of you will be able to pull through, because you are the pride of the Yanhuang nation. "Boss, hurry up and start," one of the Zodiac squad members shouted. Chi-Yu had always been kind to everyone, so although the Zodiac squad respected him, they didn't fear him. What Chi-Yu saw in their eyes was not worry or fatigue, but excitement, a fiery excitement. Yes, during the last training, he had increased the strength of all the Zodiac squad members by several times. As the strongest people in the world, who didn't want to increase their strength to a higher level, it was time for another training session. The Zodiac squad members only had anticipation in their hearts, not any other emotions. "Alright, then let's start now. Get ready, I will lead you to another peak of the human body." Chi-Yu spread his arms slightly to his sides and gently closed them in front of his chest. His arms were bent, and his palms were facing each other in front of his chest. At this moment, Chi-Yu's expression was extremely solemn, because this was the first time he was trying something like this. A ball of silver light lit up in front of his chest. That was the power of Kirin's origin. The energy fluctuations weren't strong, but when the Zodiac squad members saw the silver light that was exuding Kirin's aura, their eyes couldn't help but burn with passion. The silver light slowly spread, and when the light completely covered Chi-Yu's hands, gold, green, blue, red, and yellow, 5 colors floated out like 5 ribbons. With Kirin's origin as the core, they were released in an instant, completely enveloping Chi-Yu's body, turning him into a 5-colored light cocoon. The special energy aura made everyone present feel a little strange. Then, the energy instantly spread, and the five-colored light enveloped all the Zodiac squad members. The huge energy fluctuations suddenly increased, and under Chi Yu's tyrannical control, it didn't scatter in all directions. The light appeared quickly and disappeared just as quickly. However, when the five-colored light disappeared, more than 100 Zodiac squad members, including Shangbing, Snow Girl, and the Plant Soul, had completely disappeared. At this moment, only Chi Yu was left standing in the courtyard of the Dragon Field courtyard. The light in his eyes gradually disappeared, and a faint smile appeared on Chi Yu's face. I hope we can succeed this time. The Five Elements domain is the most suitable place for everyone to train. After all, whether it is the Zodiac squad members or the Zodiac squad members, everyone's energy is based on the five elements. Everyone's energy was based on the five elements. Who could escape from the five elements? I hope you can improve to the level I expect before the crisis comes. Today's decision was actually Chi Yu had already thought about it. He had discussed with the Kongtong Seal's spirit. If he wanted to further improve the strength of the Zodiac squad members, he needed a special cultivation method. If it was only done step by step, it would be very difficult for everyone to make a breakthrough in a short period of time. And the Five Elements domain was obviously the most suitable place for cultivation. When Chi Yu's strength had improved to another level, when he had completely entered a level that surpassed the power of ordinary gods, the Seal Spirit had completely recognized him as its master. Therefore, it wholeheartedly came to help Chi Yu. The Five Elements domain was controlled by the Kongtong Seal's spirit, and the Five Elements energy was emitted from the Kongtong Seal. Its divine power was very strong, and it could be said to be the best place for cultivation. At the same time, the Kongtong Seal now belonged to Chi Yu, and Chi Yu's own origin of nature energy could form a bridge with the Kongtong Seal. In the Kongtong Seal, Chi Yu's origin of nature could produce the best effect for everyone through the amplification of the Five Elements domain. As for the level of cultivation, it mainly depended on the time. The originally lively Dragon Field courtyard suddenly became quiet after everyone was taken into the Five Elements domain by Chi Yu. Of course, Chi Yu was not afraid that everyone did not know how to cultivate in the Five Elements domain. There was Xieji, the Seal Spirit, and even Wen Ting. As long as he found the most suitable energy to assist in his cultivation, then his Zodiac army would definitely be able to improve to a new level in a short period of time. Chi Yu returned to the villa alone. He no longer needed to cultivate. He only needed to constantly inject his origin of nature energy into the Five Elements domain to assist everyone in their cultivation. Now that he had nothing to do, he could not help but start to think about his own matters. If he wanted to continue to improve his strength, what should he do? Out of the 4 types of cloud powers, 2 of them had already been raised to their peak state. One assisted him in improving his physical strength, while the other enhanced his soul. What about the remaining 2 types of cloud powers, water and fire, that assisted him in improving his body? In Chi Yu's heart, this had always been the biggest question. Sitting cross-legged on the big bed in the room, Chi Yu could not help but feel a little lonely without his close female friends. However, he also remembered General Ji's words. The country had already agreed that he could be a special case and marry a few more wives. After this crisis was over, it was time to give everyone a status. Thinking of this, Chi Yu could not help but reveal a trace of a smile on his face. What kind of scene would polygamy be in the modern world? Thinking of this, his heart could not help but become scorching hot. Suddenly, his mind flashed, as if he had thought of something. In a flash, Chi Yu had already moved from the bed to the ground. His eyes were shining, and his aura was overflowing with excitement. Where were the 2 previous improvements? The first time was in Hell, where he improved through the ball of lightning in Hell. That was a plane that did not belong to Earth. The second time was in the Divine Realm, which was also a special plane that did not belong to Earth, so it could help him improve his strength to a whole new level. In other words, every plane had the possibility of improving one of his types of thundercloud force. If this was really the case, then if he wanted to improve again, he did not need to go to a new plane. Choosing a plane was very important. There was no doubt that apart from Hell and the Divine Realm, there were only a few powerful planes. One of them was the underworld, which was separated from the Divine Realm. However, Hades, the king of the underworld, did not even have a single loyal subordinate on Earth. Could not be compared to Hell at all. Even if he wanted to go to the underworld, he would not be able to find the passage to the underworld. Therefore, the only possibility now was another plane, which was the heaven that the Pope believed in. That's right, it was the heaven. A confident smile appeared on Chi-Yu's face. The Divine Realm could use Yamu to lure him there and help him improve his strength in the Divine Wind Valley. Why couldn't the heaven do the same? In the past 2 times, he had improved his Thundercloud Force and Thundercloud Force to the 9th Cloud Realm, which had already greatly improved his strength. It had already greatly improved his strength. Then, as long as he could go to the Heaven Realm and further improve himself there, the only thing left was probably the power of clouds. No matter what, it seemed that he had to go to the heaven. His companions were all cultivating in the Kongtong Seal, so Chi-Yu had nothing to worry about. After calling his parents and telling them that he was going out, he immediately prepared to leave the Dragon Field courtyard. He would go to the Vatican in the west to look for the Pope. The Pope definitely knew how to go to the heaven. Just as Chi-Yu was about to go out, Uncle Zhou's voice came from outside the door. Chi-Yu. Someone is looking for you. Chi-Yu was stunned. Looking for me? Who would be looking for me? Other than his parents, his companions seemed to have all gone to the 5 Elements domain in the Kongtong Seal. Could it be Shueiwe? She also came back? Uncle Zhou, tell him to wait for me in the hall. I will go down immediately. After saying that, Chi-Yu quickly packed some of his clothes and threw them into the Kongtong Seal. After tossing it into the Kongtong Seal, he walked down the stairs. No matter who it was, after dealing with it, it was time for him to set off. When Chi-Yu arrived at the hall, he was surprised to find that it was not Shueiwe, but Lady Xiao Lu. When Xiao Lu saw Chi-Yu, her beautiful big eyes revealed a gentle smile. Today, she wore a blue dress with a white shawl on her shoulders. It looked like she was going to attend some formal occasion. Lady Xiao Lu, why are you here? Chi-Yu asked in surprise. Xiao Lu smiled and said, why? Can't I come? Don't forget. I am also the spokesperson of your Kirin group. Originally, I didn't need to come. Today, there is a press conference for Kirin Group's new generation of advertising. I just went to the airport to send a friend off, so I came over to pick you and Snow Girl up. Don't you know? Seeing that Chi-Yu was still dressed in black, her expression was a little strange. Chi-Yu was stunned. Frankly speaking, he didn't really deal with the matters of Kirin Group. It had always been handled by Yu Guan and Snow Girl. But now that Snow Girl was cultivating in his 5 Elements domain, and Xiao Lu personally came to invite him, it seemed that he still had to delay for a while before he could go to Difanke. Chi-Yu invited Xiao Lu to sit down and said, Snow Girl went out to handle some matters. She might not come back for a while. Has the 2nd episode of the advertisement been shot? It's been hard on you. Xiao Lu smiled faintly. Her voice was still so pleasant to listen to, or it could be said that it was even more lively than before. There's nothing to be thankful for. The one who should be thankful should be me. If it weren't for you, how could I go to that unimaginable natural world? Being able to do something for you is something that I should repay. Chi-Yu smiled and said, Don't say that. What repayment? We're already friends, aren't we? Your uncle and Snow Girl have gone out to handle some matters. When will the press conference begin? Xiao Lu glanced at the silver watch on her hand and said, There's still about 2 hours. I've never been late. If it's convenient, can we leave now? Chi-Yu nodded and said, All right. I've been lazy for so long. It's time for me to do something for the company. Let's go. The two walked out of the villa. Xiao Lu's car was parked in the courtyard. Because Qiyu planned to go to Vatican immediately after the press conference, he didn't drive and directly got into Xiao Lu's red sports car. Xiao Lu's temperament was elegant and refined, which formed a sharp contrast with her fiery red sports car. A lady driving a super sports car full of surging power like a beast would easily give people a strong sense of stimulation. At this time, Qiyu deeply experienced this kind of stimulation. The car started. Xiao Lu's driving style was still very stable. It wasn't as fiery as Ryue, nor as professional as Qiyu. The sports car steadily drove on the airport road, heading in the direction of the city center. Qiyu, there's something I need your help with, Xiao Lu said while driving. Oh? What's the matter? Tell me. We're all on the same side, no need to be polite. Xiao Lu said, since coming back, I've been busy recently. I've recorded a new album, which is ready to be released in the near future. It'll be released by our newly established company. However, I found that after coming back this time, I don't seem to be particularly interested in these things. Moreover, when I sing, if it's in the recording studio, it's difficult to find the special feeling of the ancient beasts period. It seems that everything has become different from before. I've also finished filming the commercial for Kirin Group. I should be free for a period of time. I hate socializing the most. I'd like you to send me to the ancient beasts period. Only there can I find my own inspiration, and only then can I feel the incomparably surging aura of nature. Looking at Xiao Lu's fascinated gaze, Qiyu couldn't help but laugh. This big star is really an admirer of nature. However, it seems that it's easier for her to worship me. After all, I'm the source of nature. I'm sorry, Miss Xiao Lu, I can't fulfill your request, at least for a period of time. I think you should know that only when Snow Girl is here can we go back and forth to the ancient beasts period. However, she's going to do a very important thing now, and it's impossible for her to come back in a short time. The feeling of disappointment was overflowing. Looking at Qiyu, Xiao Lu's gaze suddenly became a lot dimmer. Indeed, everything in the modern world was no longer important to her. She had long been fascinated by the moving scenery and abundant aura of nature during the ancient beasts period, which couldn't be found anywhere else on Earth. When will Snow Girl come back? Is there a specific time? After asking this question, Xiao Lu couldn't help but feel a little shy, feeling that she was a little abrupt. Chapter 317. Xiao Lu's expression changed when she heard this. But the last time, Qiyu interrupted her. The last time was different. At that time, in order to fight against the Jili people, the human allied forces were gathered together. There were even powerful divine beasts there. You don't have to worry about your safety. However, now that the Jili people's crisis has been resolved, the human allied forces have split up and are living their own lives. The car slowed down. Xiao Lu said sadly, is there really no way to go there? Even if it's just for a few days every year. I'll just treat it as a holiday. Can I? Qiyu, as long as you can bring me there, I'll agree to any conditions. After saying this, although Xiao Lu did not feel anything special, Qiyu felt that something was amiss. Agree to any conditions? What did she mean? Of course, he understood that Xiao Lu was talking about helping his new company and Kirin Group's advertising in the future. However, when she said this, Qiyu could not help but think wrongly. After Xiao Lu said this, she quickly reacted. Her pretty face turned red and she said softly, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way. Don't misunderstand. She glanced at Qiyu. Qiyu was also looking at her at this moment. An ambiguous feeling rose in the car. For some reason, the scene of Qiyu bidding for the Ice Jade Soul Ring and giving it to Ryue surfaced in Xiao Lu's mind. She could still clearly remember that it was the first time in her life that she had felt jealous. And it was from that moment that the man in front of her had left a deep impression in her mind. In addition to the meeting in the elevator, that embarrassing scene had been lingering in Xiao Lu's mind for a long time. She could never forget everything that happened between her and Chiyu. However, she also knew that Chiyu already had so many confidants. It was impossible for anything to happen between the two of them. It was only during the era of the ancient beasts that she could temporarily let go of her inner feelings. She was actually a very proud person. Although it was impossible to erase Chiyu's shadow in her heart, it was impossible for her to share a man with another woman. That was something she would never allow to happen. The era of the ancient beasts. For Xiaolu, it was the best place to express her feelings. Therefore, she didn't want to come back after she got there. However, when she returned this time, she realized that the mark in her mind had become even more profound. It was even burning her heart at all times. She often felt like she was in a trance. The seal on her rationality seemed to be no longer as strong. Especially whenever she saw the trace of kingly aura that Chiyu exuded, this feeling would become even stronger. Xiaolu, Chiyu's call woke Xiaolu up from her memories. Xiaolu glanced at Chiyu subconsciously. Fortunately, her instincts were good, and she didn't lose control of the car. Miss Xiaolu, actually, you don't need to be so sad. Although I don't want you to go back to the era of the ancient beasts, I have a way to let you experience the scenery of the ancient beasts on Earth. I think, in that case, it should be enough for you. Xiaolu was stunned for a moment. She said subconsciously, "No, that's impossible. Not to mention other places, the era of the ancient beasts period can't be replicated on Earth now." Chiyu faintly smiled. "There's a phrase I often say. In this world, nothing is impossible. Now I want to tell you the same thing. How about this, after the press conference is over, I will bring you to the place that can be compared to the ancient beasts period. If you want, when you don't need to work, you can live there. No one will disturb you, and if you need anything, I will also satisfy you." Xiaolu was stunned. Although Chiyu was very gentle when he spoke, Xiaolu felt a kind of confidence from his aura. It was a feeling that couldn't be described in words. At least when Chiyu finished speaking, she completely believed that Chiyu had the ability to bring her a world that was similar to the ancient beasts period. Without saying anything more, Xiaolu was already looking forward to it. She didn't even want to attend the press conference. Instead, she immediately went with Chiyu to the place that he mentioned. For her, besides the impression that Chiyu left on her in the past, the most important thing was the sense of mystery. What kind of person was this man? Xiaolu still couldn't understand. If he was just a psychic, then how could he go to a place that was so far away from the ancient beasts period? Although she didn't understand the changes between energy, Xiaolu also knew that if one wanted to travel through time and space, it would require a lot of energy to do so. The venue chosen for the press conference this time was completely different from the last time. Last time, it was in the auditorium of the Shangri-La Hotel. For a group company that had just entered the industry, it was already a very good choice. However, in just over a year, Kirin Group soared at a speed faster than a rocket. In one leap, it became one of the top 3 super-large groups in the Yanhuang Republic. Moreover, the speed of continuous improvement was almost unimaginable. Therefore, this press conference was held in the Yanhuang Auditorium. This was the place where the country's highest executive council was usually not rented out to individuals. However, how could the outside world understand the relationship between Chiyu and the top management of the Yanhuang Republic? This time, the reporters who came were not only from the various media industries in the Yanhuang Republic, but also from all over the world. Every reporter's heart was filled with all kinds of questions. A company that was registered with only 100 million Yanhuang dollars. After a year of existence, without any financing, the total value of the company's assets was close to tens of billions. This speed of increase in US dollars had never happened in the history of the world economy. It was no wonder that these reporters were crazy about it. At the same time, this made the reporters even more curious. It was the leader of the group, or rather, the boss behind the group, Chiyu. Since the emergence of Kirin Group, Chi Yu had only appeared once at the last press conference. After that, he disappeared without a trace. Even the best reporters couldn't find his whereabouts. It could be said that the news about Chi Yu was pitiful. That's right. How could the Yen Huang Republic let the reporters know the specific situation of the national hero? This time, the reporters crazily gathered in the Yen Huang auditorium. They wanted to be able to see Chi Yu again at the second large-scale press conference of Kirin Group. They all wanted to know how Kirin Group could achieve such a speed of improvement in such a short period of time. The reporters' anticipation was worth it, because the person they were waiting for had finally arrived. Moreover, he came together with the superstar. Xiao Lu had been missing for nearly a year. However, not only did her popularity not decline, but it had also increased significantly. The reason was because of the advertisement of Kirin Group last time. 3 different performances with 3 different temperaments and 3 beautiful voices with different emotions had all raised Xiao Lu's popularity to an unprecedented level. And it was not only in the country. It was also the same abroad. It should be noted that Kirin Group's products were now all over the developed countries in Europe and the United States. Moreover, the price of Kirin Group's products was extremely high abroad. Xiao Lu also benefited from this. There were many international super companies. They all wanted to seek cooperation with Xiao Lu. However, if they couldn't find her, what could they do? Under the illumination of a large number of flashing lights, Chi Yu and Xiao Lu walked together to the rostrum. At this time, Yu Guan was already there waiting for them. Compared to the press conference a year ago, the current Earth-Moon pass had become more radiant than before. She even had a lot of the same temperament as Ryue. For a woman, the success of her career was undoubtedly also very important, especially for an intellectual beauty like Yu Guan. Watching a company that was founded by borrowing money grow into a worldwide group in her own hands, that sense of accomplishment was much more important than any return. Moreover, Chi Yu had already discussed with Snow Girl and gave her some shares of Kirin Group. How much assets did she have now? Even Yu Guan herself didn't know. Only when she was with Zhang Xiaoxiao would Zhang Xiaoxiao tell her resentfully. Now many people said that Yu Guan was supporting him, a gigolo, which made him very depressed. It could be seen to what extent Kirin Group had reached now. For Yu Guan, Chi Yu had absolute trust and gratitude. Not only because she was Zhang Xiaoxiao's future wife. At the same time, it was also because of Yu Guan's huge contribution. At the same time, it could be said that in the entire Kirin Group, Yu Guan was the busiest. When Snow Girl was there, she could be a little more relaxed, but now Snow Girl was with Chi Yu a lot of time. It could be said that the management methods and decision-making of Kirin Group were almost completed by Yu Guan alone. If it wasn't for the large number of fruits brought back from the ancient behemoth period every day, perhaps her body would have long been unable to hold on. The main reason why Yu Guan was able to become even more radiant than he had been a year ago was because of the fruits and the snow maidens. In order to express their gratitude to this big sister, the snow maidens would often leak some of their energy aura to nourish Yu Guan's body when they were together. Therefore, although she was the most laborious person in Kirin Group, her physical condition was much better than before. Seeing that Chi Yu actually appeared, Yu Guan couldn't help but be surprised. Originally, she didn't expect that Chi Yu would come. Even she herself had forgotten how long it had been since she saw this boss. She didn't expect that he would actually appear today. With a strange look on her face, Yu Guan moved towards Chi Yu's side and asked in a low voice, "You still know to appear. Where's Snow Girl? Why didn't she come?" Chi Yu transmitted his voice to Yu Guan. "She has something to do, she can't come. Today, you will be in charge, whatever you tell me to do, I will do it." Looking at Chi Yu's honest appearance, Yu Guan couldn't help but giggle and said, "You are the boss. Let me be in charge?" Chi Yu smiled and said, "Although I am the boss, you are the boss's sister. Of course, you will be in charge, right? No matter what, you are also my brother-in-law's wife, so naturally you are my sister. Yu Guan glanced at him unhappily. That flirtatious look, even you couldn't help but stare blankly. The press conference was held on time. Yu Guan first announced the Kirin Group's movements and development for more than a year. Then, she began the launch of Kirin Group's new product. Just like last time, it was still the advertisement that appeared on the big screen. This time, there was only one advertisement, and it wasn't divided into 3 like last time. However, it was just one advertisement, but the shocking effect it brought was much stronger than the 3 last time. The Yanhuang auditorium darkened. All the reporters held their breath and waited quietly. They all believed that Kirin Group would definitely bring them a new surprise. This time, the number of reporters was nearly 10 times more than last time. At this moment, everyone's eyes were focused on the big screen in front. The first thing that appeared was not the image, but the sound. One had to admit that the sound effect in the Yanhuang auditorium was absolutely superb. It was no less than a concert hall. When the music appeared, it was very gentle. It didn't give people any shock. It just appeared so naturally. The sound of light music brought everyone present to another world. A beautiful voice accompanied by a fresh voice appeared at the same time. If Xiao Lu's voice was elegant and refined in the past, then now her voice was simply otherworldly. It seemed like it should not exist in this world at all. The screen lit up, and the first thing that appeared was the dazzling sunlight. The sunlight was moving, and the camera instantly zoomed in. This was a vast forest. Giant trees that were tens of meters tall could be seen everywhere. In that forest, every place was so full of vitality. Xiao Lu wore a long white dress and danced in that forest. She didn't have any decorations on her body. Even the long white dress she wore was the simplest style. However, against the backdrop of the surrounding forest that was full of vitality, she was like a forest elf. Her whole person was completely integrated into the big forest. Along with the beautiful singing and graceful dance steps, circles of light green light were released from Xiao Lu's body. Nature seemed to hear her voice. Strange beasts appeared around her, but none of them came within 30 square meters of Xiao Lu. They all seemed to be intelligent, and each of them quietly listened to Xiao Lu's voice. Suddenly, Xiao Lu's dance ended with her head raised to the sky. Then, a golden light descended from the sky. A low and old voice sounded in the entire auditorium. "Goddess Nature, you've finally awakened." That low and deep voice was full of confusing effects, but it was so pure, as if it was really an order from the heavens. It shocked everyone's heart. As the golden light descended from the sky, a golden crown appeared on Xiao Lu's forehead. She slowly closed her eyes and opened her arms. The green light around her body also turned into green spots of light that were released outward. Gradually, Xiao Lu's body began to spin. "In the name of the goddess Nature, I bestow." The green spots of light wrapped around the surrounding plants, and also landed on the bodies of the animals that were watching the ceremony. A layer of misty golden light appeared on the bodies of the animals, but different degrees of mutation appeared on the plants. There were many beautiful fruits on the ground. It grew out of the mutated plant. The faint light flickered continuously, and the direction in which the plants grew was actually the direction of Xiao Lu's body. The old voice sounded again. "The power of nature is endless. The light of life will forever spread with the divine power of the goddess Nature, bestowing true vitality to people." Xiao Lu's delicate body slowly knelt on the ground. She raised her head to look at the sky. Between her eyebrows, there was already an additional diamond-shaped jade. It looked even more delicate and beautiful. The camera instantly zoomed out. In midair, the 4 colors of purple, blue, red, and cyan condensed. A huge and illusory black and silver figure appeared in that empty space. The light condensed, and the 4 colors formed a diamond-like outline of 4 big words in midair. Kirin Group. A green aura rushed from the forest straight to the sky, setting off the 4 huge words. The fruits that were growing before were set off by the huge green leaves and soared into the sky. The old voice revealed a hint of a sense of approval. The gift of heaven and earth, the descent of the divine fruit. Boom! It was as if everything had disappeared, but it was also as if everything had dispersed. The visual impact caused everything to return to normal. The last scene of the commercial was Xiao Lu's delicate body rising into the air under the green light, flying towards the sky. And those sparkling fruits constantly rotated around her delicate body. It was over. The commercial was over. The video and sound shocked not only the reporters present, but also Chiyu. He clearly saw it. The shadow in the sky was the form of enchantment. Although the light and shadow were very faint and couldn't be seen clearly, that kind of energy fluctuation, besides him, the four auspicious clouds enchantment, who else could it be? Sister Yuguan, this idea was created by Snow Girl, right? Chiyu asked helplessly. Yuguan smiled. Yes, Snow Girl is really a genius. Only she can come up with such a shocking effect. It makes our group's products look like a gift from the goddess of nature, adding a bit of a sacred color. The company's products are selling too well. I deliberately maintain a certain quantity limit. Now some smaller countries even have to auction their terrain because they don't have enough quotas. Kirin Group, it really is the Kirin Group. Chiyu was a little helpless. However, he also had to admit that the effect of the commercial just now was very shocking. Especially Xiao Lu's singing and voice, they were a level higher than before. No need to ask. This was the effect she brought back from the ancient behemoth period. The entire Yanhuang auditorium was silent for a full 3 minutes before the reporters recovered from the previous shock. The press conference then officially began. Everyone had a stomach full of questions to ask. Yuguan looked at the enthusiastic expressions of the people, smiled slightly, and said, "Friends of the reporters, please be quiet first. How about this? I know everyone has a lot of questions to ask. And our group's chairman, Mr. Chiyu, still has a lot of work to do. If you have any questions about the chairman, you can start now. After that, I will introduce the company's latest series of products in detail." Chiyu's body obviously became stiff. He knew that Yuguan was obviously retaliating against him for never contributing to the company, but he had no choice. Since Yuguan had already said so, he could only accept it. For the next hour, almost all the topics were about Chiyu. When Chiyu pulled Xiao Lu out of the Yanhuang Assembly Hall, he felt like he was about to collapse. He was even more exhausted than when he had fought with Satan. "It seems that your charm is much greater than mine." Looking at Chiyu's embarrassed appearance, Xiao Lu couldn't help but laugh. Indeed, halfway through the press conference, the questions for Xiao Lu were less than a third of the questions for Chiyu. Chiyu smiled bitterly and said, "This is the last time. Next time there is such an event, I will absolutely not participate. God, these reporters are simply too strong." Xiao Lu covered her mouth and chuckled, saying, "All right, let's go. Otherwise, if the reporters find out that the dignified chairman of Kirin Group actually slipped away with the excuse of resting, who knows how they will make things difficult for you." Chiyu looked back at the Yanhuang auditorium and said in his heart, "Sister Yuguan, you can't blame me, I have no choice. If I don't leave now, I'm afraid I really won't be able to leave." While thinking, he quickly took Xiao Lu out of the Yanhuang auditorium, got back into her sports car, and headed in the direction of the Dragon Field courtyard. "Chiyu, where are we going?" Xiao Lu asked as she drove. Chiyu was stunned for a moment and said, "Home." Xiao Lu turned her head and glared at him, saying, "Did you forget what you promised me before?" "I remember, I really forgot just now," Chiyu said embarrassedly. "Where the hell is that place? I really can't believe that there's a natural environment on Earth that can compare to the ancient beasts. Don't tell me it's Hawaii, it's impossible there." Chiyu shook his head and said with a smile, "Of course not. All right. I'll take you there, in case you're worried. However, you can only go and take a look now. You can only move there after the construction is complete. Also, you must keep it a secret. That place will be the group's biggest secret in the future. Xiao Lu nodded subconsciously. Under Qi Yu's guidance, she first drove the car to the Dragonfield courtyard and stopped. After getting out of the car, Xiao Lu said doubtfully, "You're not going to tell me that the place you mentioned is nearby, are you?" Qi Yu shook his head and said, "No, of course not. You'll know when you get there. Miss Xiao Lu, no matter what you see later, don't be too surprised. Miss Xiao Lu, no matter what you see, don't be too surprised." Xiao Lu bit her lower lip and said, "My heart is fine. Moreover, you've already shown me too many things that don't belong to ordinary people." "All right. Then let's go now." Without waiting for Xiao Lu to speak again, an invisible energy had already wrapped around her delicate body. As Xiao Lu cried out in surprise, the two of them instantly soared into the sky. In the blink of an eye, they were already in midair. Xiao Lu's eyes were filled with shock. Just now, they were still in the Dragonfield courtyard, but in the blink of an eye, there were only clouds under their feet. What's going on? Is it an illusion? It's not an illusion. Now that we're flying, that place is still a bit far away. If we don't fly, it'll be troublesome to get there. Xiao Lu looked at Qi Yu in surprise. Qi Yu seemed to be fine, floating beside her. His black clothes were very eye-catching against the white clouds under his feet, and his long silver hair fluttered behind him. She could clearly feel it. Her body was flying forward at an unprecedented speed, but she couldn't feel any of the cold air that came with flying. "Qi Yu, are you really a human?" With great difficulty, Xiao Lu calmed her heart down. Qi Yu looked at her and said, "What? How do you think I don't look like a human?" Xiao Lu stared at him and said, "You don't look like a human at all. Humans can fly? Humans can travel to the era of ancient beasts?" Qi Yu smiled indifferently and said, "There are some things. It's better if you don't know. If you know too much, it'll bring you a lot of trouble." The green wind suddenly appeared, and the clouds under their feet moved at a speed that was 10 times faster than before. A hazy feeling made Xiao Lu speechless. After all of this was too magical. They didn't fly for long. After about half an hour, Qi Yu had already passed through the clouds with Xiao Lu's body and gradually descended. Pointing at a small black dot in the sea under their feet, Qi Yu said, "Do you see that place? That's our destination this time." Xiao Lu was very smart. She turned to look at Qi Yu and asked, "Is that a small island?" Qi Yu nodded and said, "You also know that Kirin Group's products come from the era of ancient beasts. As the group continued to develop, although we controlled the number of products sold, it was still constantly increasing. It's possible to bring back fruits from the era of ancient beasts, but it's still risky. Who knows what will happen in the process of transmigration? Besides, I just told you that I don't want to destroy the balance of that era. So, we have to go there as little as possible in the future. The small island below is one of Yanhuang's Nansha Islands. There's nothing special about it. It's just an ordinary island. We spent some money to rent this island. From now on, this will be the production base of Kirin Group. At the same time, it's also a good place for our own people to relax. The entire island has an area of about 10 square kilometers. I'll set aside a third for vacation, and the rest will be used to grow the fruits we sell. What do you think? Buy an island? No, rent it. With Kirin Group's financial resources, it could indeed be done." Glancing at Qi Yu, Xiao Lu said, "But can the fruits from the era of ancient beasts really be grown on this small island? You should know how different the environment of our era is from the era of ancient beasts." With his hands behind his back, Qi Yu led Xiao Lu towards the direction of the island. "Others might not be able to, but I can." Xiao Lu's body trembled slightly. She suddenly felt strongly that every word this man said was so credible. Even if what he said now was simply like a fantasy, and judging from common sense, it was impossible to achieve at all. In fact, this small island was proposed to the country by Qi Yu when he went to see General Ji Zhongming not long ago. After all, Kirin Group had developed to its current scale, and the group needed a base. And Qi Yu and the Zodiac warriors didn't like the hustle and bustle on the mainland. After some discussion, they chose this place. Soon, Qi Yu had already brought Xiao Lu to the top of the small island. Looking around, most of the small island was covered with rocks. Perhaps it was because this place had never been developed before, but the seawater around the small island was blue and looked very clear and pure. Immediately, it gave Xiao Lu a very good impression. On the small island, there weren't many plants, and it looked completely barren. Qi Yu pointed to the north side of the small island and said, "In the future, that will be our vacation place. Later on, we will build some simple villas or wooden houses like those during the era of ancient beasts. And this side, as well as this side, will be the group's production base in the future. Originally, I planned to reorganize this place in a few days, but since you want to see the scene of the ancient beasts, we will let this place develop first. In the future, when we develop it again, it will save me the trouble of coming here again." Xiao Lu looked at Qi Yu blankly. Until now, she still didn't understand what Qi Yu wanted to do. However, her confusion didn't last long, because Qi Yu moved. Xiao Lu was still floating there, but Qi Yu had already descended another 20 meters. A green light floated up, and Qi Yu slowly closed his eyes. A huge wind formed a tornado, floating on the small island below.